Thank you, Fizzle.
He ran up on a chop, he's a boxer. Pow, right in the kisser. It's a stick, that's a drum, I'll drop some, nigga. Pow, right in the kisser. I'ma shoot the K until the cops come. Pow, right in the kisser. We did him like that cause he's a spot burner. Pow, right in the kisser. Pull up with the stick with the drum, who won't run with me? Pow, right in the kisser. Stupid shells dumping out the chop, it's 100. Pow, right in the kisser. I'ma pull it out the Louis bag, don't come for me. Pow, right in the kisser. I just stumped a nigga in some Christian Louboutins. Pow, right in the kisser. I just shot a nigga granny house, don't care who in there. Pow, right in the kisser. I can't trust the niggas that I hang with, they be shooting kids. Pow, right in the kisser.
I'll smoke a nigga like a Swiss or a pack of cigs.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I pull up with a chop on the ops and split a wig. For real.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I broke his bitch, he poppin', now I'm poppin' on fed.
Pow, right in the kisser.
We didn't drive by, we walked him down, put him in a ditch.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I got this FN across a nigga, treat him like a Christian.
Pow, right in the kisser.
And my Christian Louboutins running, chasing me a victim.
Pow, right in the kisser.
This 762's flipping, I put him in a blender.
Pow, right in the kisser.
A bartender, I give him shots, now he look drunk like he on liquor.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Those are not Glocks, buddy, those are ghost guns.
That's ain't real.
Pow, right in the kisser.
My homie smoked too many ops, he don't got no lungs.
Pow, right in the kisser.
223 shells, nigga, that's for King Kong.
That's what the dick ass.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Go play that Roof Chris, bitch, that's my theme song.
We eat that Roof Chris every time we wax it.
Pow, right in the kisser.
In this belly backpack is a big strap.
Some shit that really can't even fit in his back.
Pow, right in the kisser.
He got flip hollows, turned him to a Big Mac.
Turn his dumb ass to a burger or something.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Dead man, that's a homie you can't get back.
He's no longer, he can't come back.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Stripping every buster nigga at them kickbacks.
They have no chains on them.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Riding around the city with two straps, I feel like John Wick.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Caught in front of that stove, so I flicked him like a bit.
Like a lighter.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Bitches choosing sides cause they knowin' we the shit.
They them niggas, we got sticks.
Pow, right in the kisser.
But we don't give them shit, we just run them, then we dip.
We did.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Bro drive 50, so I had to place the order.
The order?
Pow, right in the kisser.
Chop his head off and throw his body across the border.
I flipped him like a quarter.
Pow, right in the kisser.
You was not a slaughter nigga, you the hood porter.
Those are the stones get them shit.
Pow, right in the kisser.
You could date the bitch if you got the feed to afford her.
You can't buy that bitch.
Pow, right in the kisser. He's never coming back in that stack. Pow, right in the kisser. I'ma shoot it till my hand cramp. Pow, right in the kisser. I ain't finna go in bareback, bitch. Pow, right in the kisser. You love me, then come let my friends crash. Pow, right in the kisser. I caught him like in the C class. Pow, right in the kisser. They gon' have to run a beat back. Pow, right in the kisser. You go against the team, you need cash. Pow, right in the kisser. I caught his mama at the repass. Pow, right in the kisser.
Another nigga dead, you gotta deal with it.
I mean, it's been a long ass time ago.
Pow, right in the kisser.
You an internet thug, I'm in the real trenches.
He just pop it on the ground, weird ass nigga.
Pow, right in the kisser.
He wanna squabble up, I wanna kill niggas.
I'ma hit him with this chop, we ain't gon' box.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I'm from the stink team and saw real niggas.
We run this shit, y'all weird.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I nutted her face and told her deal with it.
Splashed all on the motherfucker's face.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I was cooking in the county on the grill, nigga.
I was whipping up all type of fancy shit.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I was really in K-Town taking field trips.
Lean, May-Lean, Kim Long and all.
Pow, right in the kisser.
All dome shot, we tryna split wigs.
We tryna rearrange some shit.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Man, niggas know what the fuck going on, nigga.
Pow, right in the kisser.
Man, he's never coming back and that's that, nigga. Man, let that shit go, bro. Like,
Pow,
this shit
right
is
in the
ridiculous.
kisser.
Like, you niggas still holding on to grudges and all that shit from 3 years ago, man. Like,
Pow, right in the kisser.
I'm just saying, like, y'all niggas, like, it's come on, bro. Like,
Pow, right in the
like,
kisser.
it's over with, bro. Like, man, like, come on,
Pow,
bro.
right in the kisser.
He's never coming back and that's that. Like,
Pow, right in the kisser.
like, just face it, bro. Like, y'all just holding on to this shit, like, nigga.
Pow, right in the
What y'all
kisser.
gonna do? Wait till somebody else get flipped? Like, what's going on?
Pow, right in the kisser.
Yeah, exactly, nigga. Yeah.
Pow, right in the kisser. Pow, right in the kisser.
Pow, right in the kisser. Pow,
right in the kisser. Pow, right in the kisser. Right in the kisser.
Come on, bro.
Pow, right
He's
in
no
the kisser.
longer.
Pow, right in the kisser.
We Japanese still. You getting cooked in front of your family like a Japanese meal. It's y'all soup the hibachi, and none of you niggas can stop me. Can't help but watch me. Yo, we back again, man. We got a special announcement here. Before we pop it off tonight with the science and dealing with the papers, making the dilettantes upset. You know, we lightly discussed it yesterday about these people saying we got a jungle culture, we all jungle niggas, and we all got jungle fever. But before we get into that today, my brother Avery is going to let you know where you can contact us on social media, our verified social media account. So if anybody else is reaching out to you guys with a said account or personating and perpetrating a fraud, you'll know what our real accounts look like. So Avery, go right ahead and share with the people our socials.
Shalom, everyone. Shalom. It's good to be back on the show. So I'm just going to show y'all our Facebook page. You need to see what our Facebook page looks like. And we have two. So this is one of them. Yap Game Positive. Yap Game Positive Scholarship. And of course, y'all know what Yap means. It's a white Alu polymorphism. The plus sign stands for positive, because people with haplogroup DE are YAP positive. But anyways, YAP plus Gain Scholarship. That is the name of our real page. And the colors that we chose for this page is going to be blue and purple for now. That's our main colors. And you're going to see that in our posts. For the most part, the only thing, hold on. Having technical difficulties. All right. You're going to see that for the most part, what we post will be our videos from our Yap Game YouTube page or YouTube channel. That's all we're going to post. It's not going to be any other type of content other than the videos from our channel or Jewish holidays, or even holidays concerning Americana holidays like New Year's and stuff. But that is what our channel will look like. All the links will go back to our YouTube channel. There'll be no other type of content on our page other than that. And so just be on the lookout for that. Purple and blue, Yap Plus Gain Scholarship, and only our videos from our YouTube channel. It's not going to have anything else. And obviously, if y'all are familiar with our talking points on Genesis 49ers or on my channel or on the Yap Gang channel, y'all know what we teach. So the same things that we teach will be on this page as well. Same goes for our other Yap Gang Scholarship channel. Again, it's going to be Yap Plus Gang Scholarship. It's going to have this profile picture right here. Let me just push so y'all can see. Give it a second here. Computer's acting kind of slow. Or actually, I'll just zoom in. This is, sorry about that. This is what the channel will look like when it comes to the profile picture, the PTR, and the background picture. Again, purple and blue. This is what our PTR would look like. And the admins will be Jashub and Orthodox Moore, Elkim Barlow, Sean Harris, and various others. These will be the admins of the channel. If you don't see those admins, Jashub and Moore, Elkim, Sean, and the people that we're all familiar with, then that's not our page. You have to look at the admins. You have to look and see who is the host. And again, on the page, the only thing that's going to be posted is videos from our channel, from the Yap Gang channel. There'll be no other content on the channel but that, as well as when holidays appear. And so y'all can see right there, this is what will be posted. This is all that we'll have. So again, for both channels, if you want to know if you're at the right one, just make sure you look at the profile picture, Yap Gang Scholarship, and make sure you see who the admins are. The admins are going to be the people that we are familiar with, and yeah. Anything you want to add to this, just shoot?
Yeah, man. Look, listen. Our accounts are very simple. You can tell by the date of when our accounts are created. So
That too. Yeah, that's
don't
good
be
point.
bamboozled. I've been on Facebook for a long time. The Facebook account, the account that I have is the account I've had before I was introduced to the Israelite paradigm or whatnot. Very old page. My Twitter page is EU290. I think I started that one a year or two ago, and I don't think I have any more social medias other than the Ashubin is a car on Facebook. My Twitter account EU290. Do I have another one? I'm not remembering. Those are only two. Yeah, and YouTube, Genesis 49ers. I really don't do social media like that. Some of these guys don't have no lives. They always on social media. Like that's their life. Every day, they don't have no jobs. You know, they're living on government assistance. You know, they're forced to live with someone else. They got what do you call that? Roommates. You know, unfortunately, I don't know how that is. So I'm not on, social media all day, but when, our social media accounts are pretty simple. Anybody trying to approach you guys using our name, that's not us. You know what I'm saying? Most of you guys with half a brain know that that's not us. But these are our official accounts, man.
Right.
Game Scholarship, Genesis 49ers resource page. We're on there daily. And again, Twitter's a whole nother thing. U290, I'm barely on there. So yeah, beware of the frauds.
Mm-hmm. And just to piggyback off what you said, our Yap Gang channel, both our Yap Gang YouTube, Facebook page, both are from 2022. They're from December. I made them both on December 16th, 2022. So none of these pages that might be fraudulent, they're going to be likely from 2023. But our channel goes back to our Facebook page, should I say, goes back to December 16th, 2022. If you see 2023, then it's fraudulent because it's new. And these pages have been out for a while because some of the videos that we did were videos like when we addressed Damon Richardson. As you can see right here, Yap Gang responds to Damon Richardson. That was in 2022, if y'all are all familiar with that incident. And by the way, he still hasn't messaged us back concerning that. But yeah, pay no attention to the fraudulent Yap Gang channels. If you see any fake Yap Gang channels, report it and block it. Report and block and get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's all, trolls can do is create a bunch of fake accounts and circulate it within the 2 or 3 people in their loser circle. It is what it is. That's the day and age we're in. People can't fuck with you on the information. They just troll. But we're here for information, so let's get into it, brother.
Yes, let's get into that. Indeed.
Before we get into the main course, the main meal, the main hibachi tonight, it's a few things that you brought to my attention that I think the people should be privy of, and I want to talk about before we get to reading and breaking down, disseminating the science. Remy Iona, don't know how to say your name. Apologize.
You got it right, Remy Iona. That's right.
Recently did a video interview with Garfield. I think last week or this week. I haven't been keeping up, but apparently he did a video interview with Garfield, and now he's on Facebook, making messages. He's a little bitter about, some of the exchange or some of the after show, I guess, kind of teed him off a little bit. Look, Remy, if you watch my channel, you probably don't. Maybe someone can pass it on to you. I don't feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for anybody that claims to be an Israelite or claims to have some kind of external belief system that those type of channels are going to have an issue with. You take your goofy ass over there, and then when you get tomatoes thrown at you, whether subtly or in secret or out in the open, you want to cry foul. No, they don't work like that. Y'all grown ass men, and I doubt you were not were not privy of what goes on Garfield's channel and what his channel is about. He's a scenic. His channel is about destroying Israelite ideology. That's the main course. That's the main meal. You understand? So you take your silly ass over there and do an interview with someone that's only doing it so he can tear your ass down. That's what you get. That's what you deserve. I've been telling people this forever. The Garfield's channel, why you take your goofy ass to Garfield channel? Why you take your goofy ass to Sinetta's channel and do an interview or do any damn thing knowing you are going to be made the ass of the community, the ass in the butt of the joke. But you take your silly ass over there anyway. So you know what? Stop complaining. I don't want to stop making messages on Facebook complaining about how you were treated or the comment section. I don't give a fuck and nobody should give a fuck. These are grown ass men. They know what these channels are about. They take their ass over there any goddamn way and then get upset. They get upset. It's like you knew that goddamn junkyard dog was back there. You jumped that damn fence and now he tore your ass up. Now you want to get mad at the world. No, it don't work like that. All of y'all are silly, man. You stupid. You walk right over there knowing damn well it's a setup. Now you want to cry foul. I don't want to hear that shit, nigga. Wring your tears out. You know what I'm saying? Throw that damn tissue box out. You too old for that shit. You know? They always do this. There's always some Israelite that take their ass over to one of those channels and they get mad or try to cry foul after they get treated badly, you know, or proceed to get treated badly. That's what your ass get. That's my message to that brother, man. You want to say anything, Avery?
I would say this in terms of the Remy. I didn't watch the whole thing when it came to Remy and Garfield, but I would say this: when it comes to all this dealing with the genetics and the DNA and talking to people who don't believe that we're Israelites, I would say like possibly like coming onto our show or going on to other Israelite platform shows and giving out information that prove and show how Igbos could be Israelites. First, give the information to your people, and then when you get the chance, you can go out to other people that may not agree with our position. But if you do that, best believe that you're going to likely get into a debate. So you have to have all squares in line. You have to make sure you have the genetic aspect. You have to make sure you have the historical aspect. And I already know Remy has the historical and tradition aspect down. It's just where the DNA is, that's where things get a bit shaky. And I would recommend, Remy, that you talk to Yap Gain, because we can definitely show and prove from a genetic aspect connections between West Central African populations and Jews.
I ain't giving that man no information so he can walk his silly ass back over Garfield and try to regurgitate it so he can be made a butt. And then now our shit out there in the mud. No, you ain't doing our shit like that, nigga. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, that's why I also said talk to your own people first about proving how Igbos can be Israelites. First, talk to your own people and before you go out to other people, because our people need it more than anything. The West African traditions being connected to pre-exilic Israelite culture. Talk to us about that instead of people who just don't agree that just don't believe that we're Israelites. Talk to us, the community, about it. Show us instead of people who obviously don't agree with us. I think that's the best approach.
You're being nice, EB. Y'all take y'all ass over there with people that don't give a fuck about that shit. And then they have an after show making fun of you.
Yeah, don't cast your pearls to swine.
They laughing at your dumb ass. You went up there and gave a whole little presentation, then you gonna be the rose that sprouted through the goddamn concrete, and them niggas is laughing at you, throwing tomatoes at you and making light of everything you said, calling you a fucking liar, saying you ain't shit, essentially, and everything you do is pseudo. That's what they did to your ass. And I don't feel sorry for you, dude. Y'all grown. Y'all some grown motherfuckers, man. Use your goddamn noggin. These motherfuckers is atheists and cynics. You take your ass over there. Oh, I can come over here. It's black people over here. I can teach them Igbo history. They be like, yeah, bring your silly ass over here real quick so we can make an example out of your ass. Look at this goofy ass nigga calling himself an Israelite saying the Igbo is Israel. That's what they did to you, man. Now you're on Facebook crying foul. I don't want to hear shit, nigga. Delete them messages, man. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, don't cast your pearls to swine. That's all I gotta say when it comes to all that. Give your information out to the people who want to hear it, not the people who don't want to hear it. And I understand that's a hard thing to do, but you got to do it sometime.
All you niggas got this problem, man. Y'all seek validation from those that hate your ass. That's who you want to be validated by. You know, the niggas that talk the most shit about you. You like these crazy ass women out here that chase these no good ass niggas that beat on them and shit and cheat on them. But I love him. I love Ricky. Bitch, you crazy, hoe. This nigga done put knots all upside your head. You know what I'm saying? You got fucking unpaid tickets on your car and shit. Your shit about to get repossessed. But you just in love with these motherfuckers. That's you niggas, man. Y'all run over there. Oh, I wonder what Garfield's going to say today. Y'all in love with Garfield and Sonetta, man. Y'all make up half of his fucking audience. Goofy ass niggas over there. I wonder what Sonetta's going to, how Sonetta's going to make fun of our fucking tradition today. Let's go over here and get made fun of, y'all. Let's get tomatoes thrown in us all day. That's what y'all ass get. That's why when JJ came over here, you know, we really don't get a fair shake on Sonetta. I was like, what they got to do with me? Do you see me over there? Do you see me over there? Oh, I'm getting views. Oh, just shit. I would rather be on my own shit, doing my own thing, than be viewed like that. You got me fucked up. That's what you niggas do. So I don't feel sorry for none of y'all. Good for you. You made your bed, now lie in it. Go ahead, Avery.
No, that's all I got concerning that situation. Are you ready to transition to what we're talking about tonight?
Sean says, I never seen Garfield have any after shows disrespecting any white scholar. That's besides the point. It don't matter if he did. A snake, like, it's like that old adage about the snake. The lady get the snake and nurse the snake back to health, and then after she fed him and took care of his ass, the snake bit her ass. And then she was like, why did you do that? He said, bitch, you knew I was a goddamn snake. You know I was a fucking snake. That's how Garfield is talking. Y'all knew what the fuck I was about before you came on my channel. Now you want to act surprised and all hurt and shit. I can't believe it. I can't believe a black nigga believe the shit, nigga. That's why ain't nobody gonna shed no tear for you, man. Fuck wrong with you? You gonna take your goofy ass back over there too. I'm gonna be in the audience pointing and laughing at your dumb ass. Anyway. You know, I'm gonna say the shit I gotta say, man. That's why my channel gonna be small forever. I'm not kissing no ass. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. This ain't no church. I don't need your money. I go to work every fucking day. So I'm gonna keep it real with y'all, no matter what. These other niggas is sucking dick out here, man. All right. Anyway, on to our regular scheduled programming. All right. Fuck, you gonna cry about the shit, man? Hell wrong with this. Let's go to today's science article. Today's science article, man. You know, we promote literacy here on the channel. That y'all trying to save him, man. Who cares? Garfield. Okay, let's say that's true that Garfield he's not harsh with white scholars. Let's say that's true. That don't change anything. Niggas is still stupid. And if that's so true, why are you taking your black ass over there? Make it make sense to me, bro. And it's always the same shit. Niggas want to cry after the fact. All right. Anyway. Fuck out of here, man. We ain't gonna talk about this shit no more. We moving on. All right. Anyway, we promote literacy, scientific literacy on the channel. And it should behoove you guys to do more research. You get more knowledgeable, you know. So we're going to talk about Eurasian Niger Congo connection science that kills the Garfieldites, right?
Break that down, or do you want me to? What do you mean by that?
What part? The whole thing?
Yeah. So basically, let me ask you this. So basically, we're going to talk about how West Central African populations do indeed have Eurasian DNA going back before, basically within 3,000 to 10,000 years, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just double check. All right.
Which shouldn't exist according to these guys. Because, you know,
right.
We've always been in West and Central Africa, nowhere else.
Mm-hmm. We should have zero.
Jungle fever.
My bad, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should have zero Eurasian DNA, according to our opposition. Let me actually pull up the paper.
I mean, at the end of the day, Garfield still get the W because it's his fucking platform. So he could have been wrong about some information. Yes, everyone who studied or even knows a little bit about a little bit knows that the Igbos are not responsible for this so-called writing that he tried to attribute to Igbos. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. His platform is not built off of scholarly accuracy. It's built off of humiliating your dumbass. That's what it's built off of. You idiots keep falling for it. Oh, we all brothers at the end of the day. No, you ain't not. I don't know you motherfuckers. If it came down to it, I'm putting holes in your chest. I don't fucking know you. You be slumped over leaking out some goddamn
bullets, by the way.
Scholastically, yeah, we can say that. I don't give a fuck, man. Whatever. Take it how you want to take it. I don't know none of you niggas, man. This brother shit. Y'all kill me with that. No, hell no. I don't know who the fuck you are, bro. Fuck you talking about brother. You ain't my brother. Shit. Fuck around and pay your mama, shit, stop playing with me, man.
All scholastic, by the way.
Fuck around and start paying your mama restitution. Stop fucking playing with me. Put your ass in a pine box. Anyway. What were we talking about again?
I'm going to put the link in the private chat, the paper that we're going to address. So the other day I was online just, looking at different things and different stuff. And I came across this paper. Yeshuba, either you or I can pull it up. But basically, the paper is titled Admixture into and Within Sub-Saharan Africa. And basically that mixture that the paper is talking about is Eurasian admixture. Let me just pull it up really quick here. And I gave it to you as well, Yeshua. So Yeah, here it is. Admixture into and within sub-Saharan Africa. And when I was reading this paper, and here's all the the scientists and people who were part of it. And when I was reading this paper, the type of Eurasian that it's talking about, excuse me, the type of admixture that the paper is talking about that came into sub-Saharan Africa is Eurasian admixture, populations from the Mediterranean and stuff like that. Um, and so this is actually a really good paper because it talks about it shows you like the time frame in which the Eurasian DNA came into sub-Saharan Africa. It talks about the ethnic groups that acquired this Eurasian DNA. Obviously, it's going to mention East African populations, North African populations, but it even mentions Niger Congo and Bantu populations, and it literally says it like that: Bantu and Niger Congo. And it tells you, like I said, the time frame in which this occurred. It talks about kingdoms like the Ghana Empire and interactions with North Africa. It talks about um, like from the Common Era to the BC era when this Eurasian DNA was introduced, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern populations like that. So it's a really decent paper. It has great graphs as well that can kind of illustrate and show you where this DNA is coming from and what time frame. And Yushu plans on reading the whole paper tonight. But there are some interesting sections that I would like to point out as well. But whenever you're ready, Yushu, you can get into it. You can pull it up.
Yeah, you know how we do, man.
But again, the title of the paper is Admixture into and within Sub-Saharan Africa, if y'all want to take a gander at it.
Yeah, what we're gonna lie about today, Avery?
Oh, we're gonna lie about what the paper talked about. That's what
We're gonna lie and manipulate this source to trick you people, man. That's what we're doing. All right,
yes,
so that's
our lie is that there is not. Wait, no, our lie is that there is Eurasian DNA, even though the paper says there is. We're still lying somehow.
Hey, we beat up a person so bad the nigga stopped saying that we misrepresented it and said that the paper is faulty now. The paper's erroneous now.
I noticed that too in the comments.
We beat the nigga up so we beat the neo-Nazi up so fucking bad. The niggas were like, you know what? They got a point. The paper's erroneous.
Exactly. I saw that comment and I was like, wait a minute. Earlier throughout this whole conversation, you're talking about how we got the paper wrong. And now you're saying, no, the paper itself is wrong. Like, how did that happen?
Ass niggas, man.
But you know what that shows? That actually goes to show you that, one, we got the paper right, and two, he doesn't know how to refute the argument, so he just throws the paper in the trash. So I think we did a good job.
Now the paper needs to go in the incinerator. Yeah,
And
fire
it's
all
really
the
not just that paper, it's really all papers that talk about Eurasian DNA being in West Central African populations, because they all talk about it.
Yeah, fire all the asses. Fire
Apparently.
some random neo-Nazi on the internet doesn't like it, so fire the ass.
Mm-hmm. White supremacist, man, you just crazy, utterly crazy.
Let's go ahead and get DPR Korea in this bitch. We don't like it.
You mean Germany?
We don't like it. Public execution. Motherfucker make a video that we don't like. Public execution on some Kim Jong-un shit. That's what the niggas want. Admixture into and within sub-Saharan Africa. Happy Black History Month, by the way. You know, this I've been trying to tailor information sitting around African Americans all month, and hopefully I can keep it up, keep it going. I do got a special treat for you guys. We are going to be diving into Ouagadougou in Ghana and stuff like that. So y'all stay tuned for that, you know. But anyway,
actually what's interesting about this paper, it briefly talks about that. So this is kind of like an icebreaker to that.
Exactly. And what this paper says about Ghana and Mali is going to make the neo-Nazis baby Hitlers. Hey, you know what's funny? Like Garfield, I know you watching, man. You niggas is fans. I was looking at the joint yesterday Garfield did with old boy, and I noticed there was a neo-Nazi member.
Oh yeah.
in the chat. I'm like, Garfield, you do know that your talking points is congruent with neo-Nazi members.
Yep. That is true.
The shit is so hilarious to me, man, because you guys have this synergy with neo-Nazi and openly racist people that say terrible shit about African Americans in general. Bigging y'all up and agreeing with what y'all said. It just reminds me of the dichotomy between Marcus Garvey and Walter Plecker, right? And Ernest Cox. Marcus Garvey agreed with Ernest Cox in his white supremacist agenda and even sold 17,000 copies of his book, White America. Yes, your precious UNIA member, Marcus Garvey, propagated and promulgated a white supremacist narrative, right? Yeah, so y'all know different, man. It's just funny to me. The neo-Nazi all up in the chats, cheering you guys on. Agreeing with everything you guys are saying. Nigga on there talking about some jungle coaching. We jungle niggas. We ain't never been outside the jungle. This nigga like, hell yeah, that's right. That's right, motherfucker. Hell yeah, nigga. You heard me? Hell yeah, nigga. Shit, that nigga talking truth.
And what's funny is that, these African Americans and white supremacists that have the notion that we never left West Central Africa, none of them will ever debate Yap Gang. None of them will ever take that energy over here or to another platform and say, hey, let's sit down, have a one-on-one debate to see who's right. None of them will do it. They're all cowards, and they know they don't understand the science to debunk us. So,
look, man, if you don't like anything I'm saying, you don't have to be here. Unsubscribe, dislike the video. Hell, leave a negative fucking comment. Go subscribe to Garfield. Go subscribe to Sonetta or Tail Ministries. Pick your fucking poison. We're not here to accumulate fucking follows. We don't give a fuck about that, man. So go ahead, click off the video. I'll talk to the two remaining motherfuckers, and we'll get into this lesson. Go ahead. I'll give you some time real quick. 1 Mississippi, 2.
Do we need a timer?
3 Mississippi. Click off the fucking video, man. All right. Be offended. Back to the main thing, man. Here tonight. Setting my mic got a little loose right there, man. All right. Admixture into and within sub-Saharan Africa. Genetics, Genomics, Evolutionary Biology, and it's elifescience.org is where I'm quoting this from. Published June 21st, 2016. Oh, that's too old, Avery. Can't read this. Too old, 2016. It's outdated. Because older dates mean outdated.
But what this paper says is pretty much what the latest 2022 paper says as well. It really doesn't change. And also, there hasn't been a scientist that ever said that the data from this paper was incorrect or wrong. So it's good. We're Gucci.
Abstract. Yeah, you guys should know abstract is the summary of the paper.
Yeah.
Similarity between two individuals in a combination of genetic markers along their chromosomes indicates shared ancestry and can be used to identify historical connections between different population groups due to admixture. I know Tail watcher too. What's admixture? Autosomes. That's what reflects admixture, right?
You see, family? All right.
You see, family, he's a government agent. That's how he's got access to all these scientific papers. That's why, this guy is a Rosicrucian. He has been hired by the Biden administration to take down the Black Hebrew Israelites. That's why y'all don't like me, because I don't fuck with none of you niggas. Afrocentric, PHI, WHI, neo-Nazi, baby Hitler. I don't give a fuck. Y'all all gonna get it. Mm-hmm. These bullets ain't got no names.
The only people who don't get it, I'm about to make a joke, but never mind. Go ahead.
It says here, we showed that coastal populations experience an influx of Eurasian haplotypes over the last 7,000 years, and that eastern and southern Niger Congo speaking groups share ancestry with Central West Africans as a result of recent population expansions. In fact, most sub-Saharan populations, I don't know why it keeps doing that, so maybe I should stop. In fact, most sub-Saharan populations share ancestry with groups from outside of their current geographic region as a result of gene flow within the last 4,000 years.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off. And every now and then I might do that with certain sentences, but let's actually kind of slow down and break this section down. Let me share my screen really quick. Right here, I want to kind of talk about this because when we get in the paper, it's going to go more in depth, but I just want to pause right here. So it says, in fact, most sub-Saharan African populations share ancestry with groups from outside of their current geographic region as a result of gene flow within the last 4,000 years. I'm going to read that one more time so we can break this down. And I want to hear your thoughts when I'm done. In fact, most sub-Saharan African populations share ancestry. So they're sharing ancestry, sub-Saharan African populations share ancestry with groups from outside their current geographic region. So sub-Saharan African populations are sharing DNA ancestry with people who don't live in sub-Saharan Africa, who live outside their current geographical region as a result of gene flow from the last 4,000 years. So from what I get is that 4,000 years ago, around that time, there was some type of gene flow, and sub-Saharan African populations today, they are related to groups that are outside of sub-Saharan Africa. That's very interesting. What do you get out of that sentence alone?
You a motherfucking liar. That paper didn't say that.
But
That paper did not say we show that coastal populations experience an influx of Eurasian haplotypes over the last 7,000 years. It did not say that. You're full of shit.
Well, you know what's funny about this is that sentence, isn't that kind of what we say when it comes to, because by the way, tonight we're not really talking about whether African Americans or whether West African populations are Jews or not. That's not the main topic of tonight. But I am going to briefly talk about it right here. Isn't that kind of what we say, that West Central African populations are related to Eurasian or Near Eastern populations, like us having, like the Jews having some ancient Yoruba and Luya DNA in them because of an admixture event that happened a long time ago? Doesn't that kind of fit with that? The fact that we share ancestry with folks outside of sub-Saharan Africa? Isn't that kind of interesting?
No, that paper didn't say that, bro. You're making that up. I mean, it's called admixture into and within sub-Saharan Africa because it's esoteric. It's stylistic.
Ah, got it.
Yeah, it's all about art, brother. You gotta get with the time.
But you can go ahead and let me go back to your screen.
Yeah, it says here. Let me blow this up a little bit. You guys are funny, man. It says here, we left off here, right? Our in-depth analysis provides insights into haplotypes sharing across different ethno-linguistic groups in the recent movement of alleles into new environments, both of which are relevant to studies of genetic epidemiology. I want to say something right here, right? Because it says across different ethno-linguistic groups. A Garfieldite known as Jungle Brother says, if you're X group, you should speak the language of X group. You should keep the culture of X group. That's not how DNA works. That's not how humans work. You can have people that all share the same common ancestors, but all different groups have different languages, have different cultures, different ethnicities. This is just common sense shit that an Afrocentrist, redneck, and blackface just either doesn't get or just refuses to. Across different ethno-linguistic groups, right? Like I come from EU 290. EU 290 spans across ethno-linguistic groups, meaning there are EU 290 carriers that speak Afro-Asiatic languages. There's EU 290s that speak Arabic. There's EU 290s that speak Niger Congo derived languages. Later downstreams are phylums of Bantu. So these are different ethno-linguistic groups, but the same ancestry. There are T1A markers that speak Niger Congo. That says nothing about their ancestry. But you have dilettantes and idiots on Garfield's channel that will tell you, no, it's a culture. That's what determines who you are. Oh, really? I thought it was my fucking parents. And it ain't the people that put the seeds that created our biology. It's not about that. It's about what language you speak and what culture you practice. Oh, okay. Duly noted. You know, your daily dose of stupidity. It says here, our genomes contain a record of historical events. No. This should say our culture. It's based off our culture, Avery. That's what it should say. The paper got it wrong.
Right.
It says this is because when groups of people are separated for generations, the DNA sequence. I don't want that to happen anyway. When groups of people are separated for generations, the DNA sequence in the two groups' genomes will change in different ways. Looking at the differences in the genomes of people from the same population can help researchers to understand and reconstruct the historical interactions that brought their ancestors together. The mixing of two populations that were previously separate is known as admixture. Africa as a continent has few written records of its history. Damn, I wouldn't have known that the way these people speak definitively about, Africans' history, especially Western Central African history. You would have thought they had a long library, a huge library with, a documentary of every tribe, autobiography of every person, the way they talk so concretely about sub-Saharan African peoples and how they know where they come from just because. Well, no, Africa as a continent has few written records of its history. This means that it's somewhat unknown which important movements of people in the past generated the populations found in modern-day Africa. Busby et al. Have now attempted to use DNA to look into this and reconstruct the last 4,000 years of genetic history in African populations. As has been shown in other regions of the world, the new analysis showed that all African populations are the result of historical admixture events. However, Busby et al. Could characterize these events to unprecedented level of detail. Wait a minute, all African populations are the result of historical admixture events? I thought they were static. I thought they were stagnant. They never moved. They stayed in the same place. They stayed with the same culture. There was no evolution or nothing. Remember, the idea of people not changing comes from European colonialism. That's where that comes from. And that's what all you hear on Sonnet or Garfield, even here on the BHI side, y'all all share the same talking points. If you start off one way, you're that way forever, indefinitely, across millennia. This is the idiocy that is replete on the internet in this little small niche community known as the Afrocentric / BHI bullshitters. It says here, for example, multiple ethnic groups from the Gambia and Mali all show signs of sharing the same set of ancestors from West Africa, Europe, and Asia. Read that again. For example, multiple ethnic groups from the Gambia and Mali all show signs of sharing the same set of ancestors from West Africa, Europe, and Asia, who mixed around 2,000 years ago.
Hold on. We got to pause right there. And even I'm going to read this too. I want to break this down. For example, multiple ethnic groups from the Gambia and Mali, that's West Africa, all show signs of sharing the same set of ancestors from West Africa, Europe, and Asia who mixed 2,000 years ago. So 2,000 years ago will be around the time of the Common Era. That's like the first century AD, around that time. So West African populations in Gambia and Mali have ancestors from West Africa, Europe, and Asia. I would assume that's like Mediterranean and Middle East, stuff like that. That's pretty peculiar, especially since when it comes to the Bantu expansion, there's two time periods for the Bantu expansion. One 3,000 years ago, about that time, and then one 2,000 years ago. What do you get out of this issue when it talks about how people in Gambia and Mali have DNA from these three basic places: Europe, Asia, Middle East, more than likely, and West Africa, around 2,000 years ago? What?
It's very simple for me to say. This is not nothing, to mystify or anything like this. It shows that the ancestry of sub-Saharan Africans is more heterogeneous than these people allow. It's more heterogeneous than they allow. You have people with European ancestry and Asian ancestry mixing with these Africans. According to them, nobody crossed the Sahara during this damn time. I heard Garfield say in one show, nobody was crossing the Sahara 2,000 years ago. Nobody crossed it 3,000 years ago, even though we got gene flow coming across the Sahara, dating back to the Iron Age, even when there's a desert. But this is what happened when you're a dilettante. Garfield doesn't give a fuck about this shit. You think he cares about this paper? He'll wipe his ass. He'll print it out. I can see it right now. He'll print this motherfucker out and wipe his ass with it. He don't give a fuck about studying this shit. No, people don't care about this shit.
Him and the white supremacists.
Just push the fucking narrative. Fuck you niggas. You niggas are tree people. That's all you are. You have no diversity. Change. You people been the same all the time. You fucking jungle nigger. Go back. Be happy as a jungle nigger. Go find a tree and live in it like a fucking Keebler elf.
We're the, I guess, well, never mind.
We the Keebler elves of the world, nigga. That's what the Keebler elf. Don't make me go to the trunk like a Keebler elf, nigga. But yeah, that you think he don't give two shits about this, man. They don't give two shits. Oh, those people that are in that same vein don't care about this. It's not about reading, studying, trying to understand or get an understanding. Not about that. So we can sit up here and read these papers all goddamn day until our faces turn blue. Don't matter to them. That's why it's not about convincing nobody, bro. Y'all in it for the wrong reason. You want to get validation from those that hate you. How stupid can you be? Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Nah, I go on my little rants and we'll be here at 12 o'clock tonight. You know what I'm saying? It says here.
We stopped at the Bantu.
Yeah, I'll read it again though. Multiple ethnic groups from the Gambia and Mali all show signs of sharing the same set of ancestors from West Africa, Europe, and Asia, who mixed around 2,000 years ago. Evidence of a migration of people from Central West Africa, known as the Bantu expansion, could also be detected and was shown to carry genes to the south and east. So we know Bantu-related peoples, my ancestors, went down, conquered, and displaced other forager groups, and Booty pygmies were displaced. A lot of them were displaced and reduced during that time, and that's why E1B1A has the lion's share of male lineages in sub-Saharan Africa. It says here, an important next step will be to now look at the consequences of the observed gene flow and ask if it has contributed to spreading beneficial or detrimental mutations around Africa. Introduction. Advances in DNA analysis technology and the drive to understand the genetic basis of human phenotypes has led to a rapid growth in the amount of genomic data that is available for analysis. Whilst tens of thousands of genetic variants have been associated with different diseases in the populations of European descent, less progress has been made in studies of important diseases in Africa. Several consortia are beginning to focus on the understanding of the genetic basis of infectious and non-communicable disease, specifically in Africa. And a number of recent studies have described patterns of genetic variation across the continent. Analysis of the structure of genetic variation are important in the design, analysis, and interpretation of genetic epidemiology studies. That's going to mess me up every time. Epidemiology studies. I'm going to have to listen to someone say that, which aim to uncover novel relationships between genes environment, and disease. And provide an opportunity to relate patterns. Come on, click off the screen. I'm gonna have to find another source. I hate that. That's
Use
bugging
the
me.
link. Use the link that I put in the private chat. It's a PDF, and it looks a lot better than this.
All right, hold on. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
use
try
it.
the deal, and then I'm gonna hit the eject button here in a minute if it keeps doing that. It says, and provides an opportunity to relate patterns of association to historical connections between different human populations. Admixture occurs when genetically differentiated ancestral groups come together and mix. You hear that, Tail? That's what admixture is. When you look at your autosomes, you're looking at your mixed ancestry. Thank you, Brother Hebrew. Epidemiology.
Yeah, that's a tongue twister right there.
Admixture occurs when genetically differentiated ancestral groups come together and mix, a process which is increasingly regarded as a common feature of human populations across the globe. Genome-wide analysis of African populations are refining previous models of the continent's history and its impact on genetic diversity. That's another thing, too. We know Africa is the most genetically diverse continent on the planet, but for some reason, y'all keep trying to make it homogeneous or homogenous. You try to make it homogenous, and there's only one. Africans can only be one thing, across millennia, but it's the most genetically diverse continent on the planet. Make that make sense. Now y'all overdosing, y'all ODing on stupidity. It says one insight is the identification of clear but complex evidence for the movement of Eurasian ancestry back into the continent as a result of admixture over a variety of timescales. No. Avery, the paper didn't say that. The paper did not say Africans have Eurasian ancestry. It didn't say that.
Africans with Eurasian DNA. What the heck?
What? The paper is implying that? Oh, no, it can't be. Africans can't be nothing but tree people. What the fuck is this talking about?
You're nothing but orcs and goblins.
Obviously, this is, paid agent stuff. We're agents. It says, on a broadest sample of 18 ethnic groups from 8 countries, the African Genome Variation Project. I've covered this paper before on the channel. I put this in my my PowerPoint before. Great paper, by the way, and it tells you that the modern populations of sub-Saharan Africa may not represent ancient ones. That's what that paper says. And that most likely the populations of sub-Saharan Africa was once inundated by a sun-related people, not a Bantu or Niger Congo related people. So a great paper. Go read the supplemental. It's a big packet, but you can go to the part about the Igbos, and it breaks that down. It says recreated a previous analysis to identify recent admixture within the last 1.5 thousand years ago in the Fulani of West Africa. It also talks about the 3,000 year admixture too with the Fulani. But it says in several East African groups from Kenya, older Eurasian ancestry 2,000 to 5,000 years ago, and Ethiopian groups consistent with previous studies of similar populations, and a novel signal of ancient less than 7.5 thousand years ago Eurasian admixture in the Yoruba of Central West Africa. Now, none of these admixture signals should not exist in these people groups. It should not exist because, again, remember these guys said that these are static people. They're jungle people. They've always been there, right? They've been George of the jungle. Watch out for that tree forever. We've been Ooga Booga forever. We ain't never been outside of sub-Saharan Africa. We were teleported there. Matter of fact, aliens dropped us off there.
Dang.
And we've been there ever since. God damn it.
But that's interesting, though. So there is Eurasian admixture in the Yoruba of Central West Africa. There indeed is Eurasian DNA. Even though some people would try to say that there isn't, all these papers are basically saying that there is. So interesting. Okay.
Right. So before you read, let's go back up because some people slow. What is admixture? Admixture occurs when genetically differentiated ancestral groups come together and mix. How do you mix with these people? You got to be around them to mix, right? You can't Wi-Fi or email your damn DNA to somebody. You can't Bluetooth your damn DNA. You can't airdrop your DNA to somebody.
Wait, so you're telling me that this Eurasian DNA in the like Yoruba, as an example, didn't just pop up in them out of nowhere? Is that what you're saying?
It did not have de novo inception, or other words, spontaneous inception. It just didn't pop up out of nowhere, abracadabra. It didn't Houdini, you know what I'm saying? Motherfucker didn't email his Y chromosome to some motherfucker across the damn continent. It's not what happened. In order for these people to mix, they have to be in close proximity to one another.
Oh, so
Right?
you're basically saying an African man, as an example, got with a Eurasian woman and had a baby? Is that how it happened?
People that had those genes, they had sex with them and reproduced. That's why we see these markers and these genetic signals and microsatellites within them today. That's why.
Interesting. Okay.
You know, they try to mystify people with this shit. It's very simple. Very, very simple. People had sex with each other. In order for you to have sex with them, you got to be in close proximity. Now, we know they wasn't in no damn sub-Saharan Africa. Where were they? They had to be outside of that. That's why we went over that paper yesterday.
Oh, I get it. So
Sub-Saharan-
that's why they call it admixture, because they admixed. They mixed with each other. Interesting.
Right. You see what happens when you don't read shit esoterically all the goddamn time? You just read what it says. Niggas want to read esoterically and try to explain away shit instead of just reading what it says.
Admix means they mixed. Okay, got it.
Right. Now they got genetics wireless. Right. That's their cell phone. That's they plan. You can ship. You can text message a nigga your fucking YDNA. Goofy shit, bro. Comparisons of contemporary sub-Saharan African populations with the first ancient genome from within Africa. A 4.5 thousand year old Ethiopian individual provides additional support for limited migration of Eurasian ancestry back into East Africa within the last 3,000 years. And that Ethiopian was,
Modem.
You got people saying we weren't even in East Africa, and there's an what is it? What
E1B1A2.
E1B1A2, but I forget the mutation.
E-M 329, I believe.
Yeah, so he was in East Africa. How did he get there? He just magically popped up. And then if you just go with the strict secular science, it tells you that E1B1A emerged in East Africa. That's the idea. That's what's been posited by a lot of geneticists.
Yep, they either say the Horn of Africa or they say North Africa. So, which is not West Central Africa, by the way.
Hey, Rue, watch it now. I'm an Android user. I just know about AirDrop, okay? As I push the envelope here, all right, brother? It says here, within this time scale, the major demographic change within Africa was a transition from hunting and gathering to pastoralist and agricultural lifestyles. So geneticists, they look at that transitional period, they tie it to genes come from Eurasia. Now people say, "Oh, that's the Hamitic hypothesis." No, it's not. Stop smoking crack. Stop sniffing fucking bath salts and chalk, and maybe you can think clearly. That has nothing to do with the Hamitic hypothesis, you asshole. This has everything to do with cultural exchange and endemic diffusion. That's what happens when people move, idiot. They bring their ideas with them. They bring their technical know-how with them.
Yeah, these weren't like blonde-haired, blue-eyed, other groups coming in. These likely were E-markers that were brown skin.
Yeah, they want to hear that. They want to hear that shit. That's why they say it could the Bantu. That's why Fruticus says in his book, could the Bantu expansion be the introduction of Eurasian peoples back migrating into Africa?
Yep.
Oh, he didn't say that. It's in his goddamn book, man. Molecular photofitting. It says it.
I mean, it would make sense. That's what the I think it was the 2022 paper said, that that the West Central African peoples had Eurasian DNA, and then they passed it on to the Pygmy and Khoisan peoples.
Shit. Everything in goddamn Hamitic hypothesis to these Negroids. It says here, This shift was long and complex and occurred at different speeds, instigating contrasting interactions between the agriculturalists, pioneers, and the inhabited people. And here's another thing too. No wonder how they feel the way they feel about sub-Saharan Africa. Look at how they treat Egypt. Egypt got to be black all the goddamn time. It's got to be Africoid. If it's not Africoid, it's an invader. It's like, damn, you won't even let Egypt be diverse. And it's right there. It's a Near Eastern fucking country. What the fuck are you talking about? Queen Tut and all them are fucking Eurasians. King Tut is a Eurasian. You won't even let Egypt, you won't even allow Egypt to be diverse, and it's a Near Eastern country, Afro-Asiatic language. Got fucking Lapizuli from Afghanistan. Fucking Afghanistan! And you got niggas on there, the white people came, and the Arab invasion, the invaders, they've never been fucking Eurasians. There was all black. It was a crispy, crunchy black. It was blacker than black. Yeah, click off the video. Click off. Unfucking subscribe. Anyway. It says here. The change was initialized by the spread of pastoralism, i.e. the raising and herding of livestock across Africa and the subsequent movement east and south from Central West Africa of agricultural technology together with the branch of Niger Congo languages known as Bantu. The extent to which this cultural expansion was accompanied by people is an active research question, but an increasing number of molecular studies indicate that the expansion of language was accompanied by the diffusion of people. The AGVP also found evidence of widespread hunter-gatherer ancestry in African populations, including ancient 9,000 years ago. Khoisan ancestry in the Igbo from Nigeria, and more recent hunter-gatherer ancestry in Eastern and Southern African populations. 2.5 to 4.5 thousand years ago in Eastern, and then 0.9 to 4,000 years ago in Southern African populations. The identification of hunter-gatherer ancestry and non-hunter-gatherer populations together with the timing of these latter events is consistent with the known expansion of Bantu languages across Africa within the last 3,000 years. These studies have described a novel and important influence of both Eurasian and hunter-gatherer ancestry on the population genetic history of sub-Saharan Africa and provided an important description of the movement of alleles and haplotypes into and within the continent. But questions remain of the extent and timing of key events and their impact on contemporary populations. So I did a show and presentation on some of these different haplotypes, like H being in sub-Saharan Africa. How did it get there? They posit a coastal route along the west coast of Africa is how you see H in Cameroon and Senegambia and Senegal. Haplogroup H is European, by the way, but people don't know. It does come from the Middle East initially, but then they settle in Europe, and then different downstream clades of it arise. And also, how did T1A get into Cameroon population? These are obviously Near Eastern haplogroups. How did they get there? Migration, migration, and they settled and had long, successful lineages. That's why they're there today. It's not that hard to figure this shit out.
Right. And by the way, I wanted to touch on something. I'll let you get to where you're at in the paper, but I want to touch on something really quick. You had read it so fast I didn't realize it, but right here, I think this is pretty interesting. I'm just gonna touch on it really quick. So basically, what Yeshua read a few minutes ago, he talks about how agriculturalist pioneers kind of brought in agriculture and farming, the raising of cattle and livestock into West and Central Africa, agricultural technology, stuff like that, as well as pastoralism. I believe it says somewhere in here. Now, all that's pretty important because when it comes to agriculture and livestock and pastoral, here it says right here, the spread of pastoralism. When this stuff is being brought into Central West Africa, what people should understand is that agriculture and pastoralism began in the Near East. It began with populations like the Natufians and pre-pottery Neolithic A, B, and C cultures. So the fact that we see pastoralism and agriculture entering into West Central Africa, these will be Eurasian populations, and it likely would be the ancestors of people like Yoruba and who else? Those Central West African peoples with haplogroup E. They're the ones that's bringing this agriculture and pastoralism and iron working into West Central Africa. Again, all beginning in the Near East. Whereas the A and B markers are the indigenous inhabitants in West and Central Africa. They're the ones that are hunter gatherers. So I just want to point that out really quick.
That's tomorrow's show, Avery. We're gonna do a special on the forest people, the jungle people. I'm a jungle boy, just trying to make it. I'm a jungle boy. We're gonna be dealing with the Mbuti pygmies, how long they've been in sub-Saharan Africa. You know, so we'll be dealing with the forest people, you know. It's funny because I was thinking about a true story in which is calling himself the jungle nigga now. Jungle nigga and jungle Jim drinking jungle juice. It's so funny because if memory serves me correctly, when he was on our channel a long time. You probably don't remember this, Avery. Came on the channel and he revealed that he had haplogroup I. I remember this, man.
What the heck?
I'm 90. What sister he said
95%.
I'm 95% sure this man got on the channel and said he had haplogroup I, and he up here trying to claim fucking forest people. You false claiming the forest, nigga. How the fuck you a false claim the jungle, nigga? Nigga false claiming. Claim your fucking Scottish and your fucking
No, he can have jungles, you shoot. He can have the forests of Germany, you know.
Oh yeah,
the Celtic people lived in forests and stuff like that. So he can the Celts and the Gauls and stuff, that he can have the forest. Not a jungle, but he can have a forest.
I don't think he want that, bro. And isn't that what Benaiah said, the half alien?
Oh yeah, the dark forest of Germany. In the dark forest of Germany.
What a clown, man. All right, so let me go back here. It says here we analyze genome-wide, because he came on the show, I be praised, and he was like, you can't talk about Nas because I know Nas's family. That was him. He got the same haplogroup as Nas. I remember that. It was a while back. I know Nas's family. Why would you talk about Nas like that? How am I talking about Nas just by saying what his ancestry is talking about him? Well, you niggas is something else, man. Go jump off a cliff. It says, here we analyze genome-wide data from 12 Eurasians, 46 sub-Saharan African groups. Half 23 of the African groups represent a subset of samples collected from 9 countries as part of the Malaria Gen Consortium. Details on the recruitment of samples in relation to studying malaria genetics are published elsewhere. The remaining 23 groups are from publicly available datasets from a further 8 sub-Saharan African countries. In a 1,000 genomes project, with Eurasian groups from the latter included to help understand the genetic contribution from outside the continent. With the exception of Austronesian and Madagascar, African languages can be broadly classified into 4 major macro families: Afro-Asiatic, Nilo-Saharan, Niger Congo, and Khoisan. And although we have representative groups from each, our samples represent a significant proportion of sub-Saharan populations in terms of number, but does not. This is a grammatical issue here, right? Should say, but does not equate to a complete picture of African ethnic diversity. We created an integrated data set of genotypes at 328,000 high-quality SNPs and use established approaches for comparing population allele frequencies across groups to provide a baseline view of historical gene flow. We then apply statistical approaches to phasing genotypes to obtain haplotypes for each individual and use previously published methods to represent the haplotypes that an individual carries as a mosaic of other haplotypes in the sample, so-called chromosome painting. We present a detailed picture of haplotype sharing across sub-Saharan Africa using a model-based clustering approach that groups individuals using haplotype information alone. The inferred groups reflect broad-scale geographic patterns. At finer scales, our analysis reveals smaller groups and often differentiates a closely related population consistent with self-reported ancestry. We describe these patterns by measuring gene flow between populations and relate them to potential historical movements of people into and within sub-Saharan Africa. Say it with me, Garfield. There's people coming into sub-Saharan Africa, and then people are dispersing within sub-Saharan Africa. Something that y'all don't believe happened, right? But the genes are saying otherwise. It says here, understanding the extent to which individuals share haplotypes rather than independent markers can provide a rich description of ancestral relationship and population history. For each group, we use the latest analytical tools to characterize the population as mixtures of haplotypes and provides estimates for the date of admixture events, as well as providing a quantitative measure of the co-ancestry between groups. We identify the dominant events which have shaped current genetic diversity in sub-Saharan Africa. We close by discussing the relevance of the observations to studying genotype-phenotype associations in Africa. Results. Broad-scale population structure reflects geography and language. Throughout this article, we use shorthand, current-day geographical and ethno-linguistic labels to describe ancestry. For example, we write Eurasian ancestry in East African Niger Congo speakers, where the more precise definition would be ancestry originating from groups currently living in Eurasia and groups living in East Africa that speak Niger Congo languages. We also stress that the use of Khoisan, and which this shouldn't make any sense right here, according to y'all, because we supposed to indefinitely and unto perpetuity speak the same language of our ancestors and culture, practice the same culture of our ancestors. I literally heard Jungle Juice the other day make that statement. So how do you explain these people from Eurasia currently living in East Africa today speaking Niger Congo languages? How do you explain that? With your line of fucking reasoning. Again, you guys are ODing on stupidity.
And that right there is why they don't want to debate us, because we will be asking those very questions, and in the heat of the moment, they will have no answer and they will lose the debate.
Here's their answer. The Bible fake. Abraham fake. Shem fake. They're all fake. Fuck Equiano. Like, okay, brother. The Bible fake. Everything's fake. Can you please address what I just said? The Israelites fake. All right, man. You on crack, man. I'll go somewhere else. You mentally.
It's funny. They make these arguments towards, black people, particularly black people who believe that they're Israel, but they would never, ever say these things to the Jewish people. If they were in a debate against a rabbi or even a secular Jew or an Orthodox Jew, whatever, they would never make those comments. I don't think, at least. I don't think they'll try to say, oh, the Israelites are fake, because a Jew would look at them and be like, you're saying my ancestors are fake? You anti-Semite?
You anti-fucking Semite? Hold your hand out. Take your ass in the room and go to bed.
That's what I would love to see.
And don't turn the TV on and cut your phone and give me your phone.
That's why I love to see these conscious community types debate a Orthodox Jew on their history.
See what they did to Kyrie Irving ass? Think they're gonna do your dumb ass? Stupid prick. Anyway, it says we also stress that the use of Khoisan in the current setting refers to groups with shared linguistic characteristics, which does not necessarily imply shared close genealogical relationships. Oh, so you can speak the same language, have the same cultural background, but not be the same, according to genealogy. Oh, I did not know that because I was listening to some crackheads on Garfield channel, and they made it seem like if you spoke these things, kept the same culture, you motherfuckers is blood.
I mean, a perfect example is the Oromo people, or excuse me, Oromo. Wait, no, I think yeah, Oromo. Oh, yeah, the Oromo
The
people. Yeah.
Oromo, yeah.
So, so a great example is the Oromo people in the Horn of Africa of Ethiopia. They are an E1B1A population that speak an Afro-Asiatic language. And that's another thing. A lot of people say E1B1A doesn't speak Afro-Asiatic languages. There's actually quite a few groups that do, and I'm talking about one of them right now, the Oromo. They speak an Afro-Asiatic language, and they're E1B1A. Whereas you have other groups that are E1B1A that speak a Bantu language. Then you have
Mhm.
other groups of E1B1A that speak a Niger Congo
Nile,
language. Then you
Nile
have other
Saharan.
groups of E1B1A that speak other types of Afro-Asiatic languages, like Chadic or something. So Omotic. Yeah. I was like, is it Oromo or Omotic? But yeah, I'm talking about the Omotic. Yeah. Oh yeah, High be praised. Put it in the chat.
I told you he's the sixth man. Anyway, it says here our combined data set included 3,283 individuals from 46 sub-Saharan different African ethnic groups and 12 non-African populations. An initial fine structure analysis demonstrated substructure into two of the African ethnic groups, Tufula and Mandinka. So we split both of these populations into two groups, giving a final set of 48 African groups for all analysis. And then here's the chart here. Did you want to break this down? I think I seen you pull this up.
Yeah, we can break down the second chart. This one, it's a bit
What's the
much.
first? What's the top one showing?
All right, hold on. Let me
A, B, and
pull it up on
C.
my screen real quick.
We can
Oh, wait.
easily, I was just doing this for the audience. Take your ass down and read the shit.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, that's obviously the,
So
the best option. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so A is the origin of the 46 African ethnic groups used in the analysis. Ethnic groups from the same country are given the same color, but different. Come on, stop playing with me, man.
If you need to use the PDF one, it's in the private chat.
Yeah.
I think the PDF one's better.
So every time I try to highlight, this pops up, then it doesn't want to go away. You know?
Yeah. Try using the the PDF.
All right, hold on. Is your
If you
PDF
keep
black and white or color?
It's color.
All right, there it is. Okay, so it says, but different shapes, the legend, given the same color but different shapes, the legend describes the identity of each point. Figure 1, figure supplement 1, and figure 1 source data provide further detail on the provenance of these samples. The PCA shows that the first major axis of variation in Africa, PC1 y-axis, splits southern groups from the rest of Africa. Each symbol represents an individual. PC2 x-axis reflects ethno-linguistic differences, with Niger Congo speakers split from Afro-Asiatic and Nilo-Saharan speakers. Tick marks here and show the scale. Show the scale. C, the third principal component, PC3 x-axis, represents the geographical separation of Niger Congo speakers, forming a climb from West to East Africans. D is the result of the fine structure clustering analysis using copying vectors generated from chromosome painting. Each row of the heat map is a recipient copying vector showing the number of chunks shared between the recipient and every individual as donors. The columns. The tree clusters individuals with similar copying vectors together, such that block-like patterns are observed on the heat map. Darker colors on the heat map represent more haplotype sharing. Textual details. Individual tips of the tree are colored by country of origin, and 7 ancestry regions are identified and labeled to the left of the tree. Labels in parentheses describe the major linguistic type of the ethnic groups within. AA is Afro-Asiatic, KS is Khoisan, NC is Niger Congo, and S is Nilo-Saharan. So, figure 1 is the overview of the sample population, describing the content, region, numbers, of individuals used, and the source of any previously published data sets. So let's go up. So we see Central West Africa, West African, East Africa, East African, East African, South African, South African, right? And up here, each color responds. Of course, the dark blue is West African, and we see over here in this region here. Can we get this a little bigger? Because it's kind of blurry.
Yeah, you have to push the down arrow with the line under it. You want to make it bigger HD.
There we go. So, of course, you have your Fula, Jola, Mandinka, Mahongo, Sarahule, Sudare, and Wolof. Probably butchered those other two. Your Bambara and Malinki. They're a different color. Look at that. Right?
Yeah, dark purplish blue.
So West Africa, and then this up here is Central West Africa. Right.
Yeah.
The cons,
Niger Congo. Go ahead.
Yeah, Masi, cons, the Kasem, they're saying that Central West African, the Nuncom, Central West African, Yoruba has that color there. Let me find the Yoruba here, right here.
They're like a dark bluish purple or something.
Yeah.
It's a little bit further down in Nigeria.
Yeah, but they got the circle up there, right? Look.
No,
shape.
It's near Nigeria, right there.
See it though? That's the shape, the circle.
Yeah.
They got the Malinki as a circle too, so maybe it's over here.
No, go down near the country of Nigeria, right there.
Right here. I'm slow. No, this ain't Nigeria right here.
No, that's Cameroon up
right
above.
Here.
No, that's Benin.
That's I'm feeling geography. It's right here.
Yeah, that's not.
I see the circle. I'm feeling geography like a motherfucker. Yeah, damn. South Africa, East Africa. The red is Bantu. And see how these people cluster together over here, because B is about one of the PCs, right?
Yeah, they always have like 2 or 3 different ones, PCA charts.
Yeah, so
I like PCA charts. They're pretty fun.
So where's the green, right? South Africa.
Yeah,
and
that's
you
like
see they all kind of cluster together over here, and the darker green clusters together.
Yeah, because I think the green is the Khoisan types, and the Khoisan.
Yeah, it is. I see it right here. The Nama, the Ishun.
I'm not going to try to pronounce them. But yeah, what's interesting about this chart is that it kind of shows. It's interesting because it almost kind of shows West Africans being kind of close to East African population.
You're a liar, and the truth is not in you.
But you see how that blue is close to that purple?
Yeah. And purple is east.
Yeah. It's like Sudanese, Afar, Amhara, Oromo, Tigray, stuff like that. Basically, Afro-Asiatic East African populations.
Yeah, they're there. And the red's here. And what about this orange here? What do you know about that orange?
That's Tanzania. So that's going to be Bantu populations there, like the Luya.
Right here, Luya, yeah. They're all clustering.
And others that I'm not going to, that's hard to pronounce.
But you got to tell the people what that cluster is, because it tells you it's based off of, right? So PC2 reflects ethno-linguistic differences with Niger Congo speakers split from Afro-Asiatic and Nilo-Saharan speakers. So PC2 represents the linguistic differences, I think. PC2, then PC3, what does that represent? We just read it. Geographical separation of Niger Congo speakers forming a climb from west to east Africa. So
yeah, from west to east. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so they you can see it, the blue. and then the am I looking at it here? I'm looking at another string. So when you go to PC3,
which is C.
you see right here, red.
Yeah, from East Africa to West Africa.
Yeah, and language differentiation right here because you have the West African Congo
Niger Congo,
speakers,
yeah.
and then you see it going over here to the East African,
And that's interesting because it reminds me of that video that we played when when it got copyright strike, or not copyright strike, but when it got taken down. In that video, it talked about how there are words, Afro-Asiatic words like East African and West African words that are the same. Like for hippo, and that was when they were in the Green Sahara. So it's interesting how this is kind of illustrating that. I want to see if there's more words that kind of are the same.
And look at the Luya over here. They cluster real close. Of course, the East Africans because they've been over there.
Right, they're all in North Africa in the Green Sahara. Yeah.
And then, of course, look, the Somalis kind of cluster down here. What's that about? Oh yeah, because they mix with East Africans. That's right.
Yeah, the Khoisan people have some Kushite, quote unquote Kushite DNA. Basically Horn African. Let me put it that way, not Kushite.
They all clustered tightly here. Very, very interesting stuff. You want to break this one down, the heat map?
I mean, we don't really have to. I mean, I'd rather break down the other figure 2, I think, because it gets into the timeline and it gets into the percentage of admixture.
Yeah, but we know wherever these groups intersect is showing that some kind of admixture here in this list, right? And this heat map.
And I really don't like I see a lot of these type of heat maps. I don't like how they format them because they look weird to me. But
oh, they're very simple.
Yeah, I know, but it visually it's just kind of jarring,
All right, bougie.
Hey man, it's
This makes sense. South Africans to have that type of admixture. Because Bantus, which will carry West African ancestry and Central West African ancestry, will eventually mix with them. All right, we'll move on. Let's go down. I try to take my time on these graphs now because there's so many people that just look at pictures and run with the picture and don't even read on how to understand and comprehend the goddamn picture.
I didn't know people were looking at these papers at all, or ops, should I say?
Somebody looked at a picture and said, "We are basal West Africans." Like, that's not what that's saying.
Oh, you're right. Okay, I remember now. Some of the white supremacists are looking at these pictures and not realizing what they mean. Yeah, you're right.
That was actually a black person who said that.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought he was talking about our #1 fan at the moment.
No, not him. He said that too. Before that, we did a show about it. Remember we read the entire David Reich paper about West African foragers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
It says here, as an initial description of the genetic structure of the samples, we apply principal component analysis to the genotype data. As in other regions in the world, the leading principal components show that genetic relationships are broadly defined by geographical and ethnolinguistic similarity. The first two principal components reflect ethno-linguistic divides. PC1 splits Southern Khoisan-speaking population from the rest of Africa, and PC2 splits the East African, Afro-Asiatic, and Nilo-Saharan speakers from Sub-Saharan African Niger Congo speakers. The third axis of variation defines East Africa versus West Africa, suggesting that in general, population structure in Africa largely mirrors linguistic and geographic similarity. To access the information from the combination of markers along chromosomes, we phase the genotype data into haplotypes and apply previously published implementation of chromosome painting to estimate the amount of individual genomes that is shared with each other individuals in the data. More specifically, we paint each recipient individual's genome as a mosaic of haplotype segments copied from each other donor individuals and summarize these as copy and vectors. We use the clustering algorithm implemented in fine structure. Group individuals purely on similarity of these copying vectors. The pairwise co-ancestry between individuals can be visualized as a heat map, with each row being the copying vector for each sample, and these are clustered hierarchically to form the tree which describes the inferred relationship between different groups. Fine structure analysis identified 154 clusters of individuals grouped on the basis of copy and vector similarity. Some ethnic groups, such as the Yoruba, Mosai, Jola, and Juhansi, form clusters containing only individuals from their own ethnic group. In other populations, most notably from the Gambia and Kenya, individuals from several different ethnic groups cluster together. These are two countries where the most ethnic groups were sampled, 7 and 4 respectively, and differential sampling could partly explain this observation. Consistent with PCA, the fine structure analysis indicates that African populations tend to share more DNA with geographically proximate populations, dark colors on the diagonal, figure 1D. Block-like structures on the diagonal indicate higher levels of haplotype sharing, as measuring by the number of chunks copied within groups. These patterns are strongest in a subset of Khoisan-speaking individuals. For example, the Juhansi, several groups from the East Africa, Sudanese, Ari, and Somali groups, and the Fulani and Jola from the Gambia. Using the results of the PCA and fine structure analysis together with ethno-linguistic classification and geography, we defined several groups of populations within Africa, which we refer to as ancestry regions. When describing gene flow across Africa from this perspective, the heat map also shows evidence for co-ancestry across the continent, more chunks copied away from the diagonal, which is indicative of historical connections between modern-day groups. For example, East Africans for Kenya, Malawi, and Tanzania tend to share more DNA with West Africans than vice versa, which suggests that more haplotypes may have spread from West to East Africa. These patterns of co-ancestry provide evidence of widespread sharing of haplotypes within and between ancestry regions. It's good to read, man. Reading is fundamental. Don't be a picture page warrior. To quantify haplotypes reveal subtle population structure. To quantify population structure, we use two metrics to measure the difference between each of the 48 African and 12 Eurasian groups. First, we use the classical measure FST, or F statistic, which measures the differentiation in SNP allele frequencies between two groups. The second metric uses the difference in copying vectors between two groups to estimate the total variation distance. At a haplotypic level, which provides an alternative measure of differentiation based on combination of alleles at SNPs along chromosomes. Figure 2a shows that two metrics side by side in the upper and lower diagonal when compared to the level of differentiation between Eurasian and African populations. F statistics measure at our integrated set of SNPs is relatively low between many groups of West, Central, and East Africa, yellows on the upper right triangle. In contrast, TVD between the same population highlights haplotypic differences within Africa, which are as strong as between Europe and Asia, pink and purples in the lower left triangle. Whilst pairwise TVD tends to increase with pairwise F statistic, the relationship is neither perfect or linear. For example, the Chanyi from Kenya have relatively low F statistics, but high TVD with West African groups like the Jola, showing that whilst allele frequency differences between the two populations are relatively low, when we compare the population's copying vectors, the haplotypic differences are some of the strongest between sub-Saharan groups. So this is the chart you want to bring out, this heat map?
Oh, my bad. It's the third one then, not this one.
This is a good one too. What's wrong with you, brother?
I've seen better ones, bro. When it comes to it, because it reminds me of the zygote. I think that's how you pronounce it. Charts, and I like the ones that use world populations instead of exclusively African populations. This is good, but like I've seen, I like the ones that use more populations. That's all.
Hey, I'm a semi Bantu because I'm a Bantu with a semi.
But basically, what this is just showing is genetic closeness. That's all. Really.
We just read it, yeah. All right, so let's go down.
Number 3, I think, is where it's at. It's the one I like. 3 and 4. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It says in Figure 2, Figure Supplement 1, we show a comparison of PCA based on genotype data and fine structure, which uses haplotypes from a subset of individuals from the Central West African Niger Congo ancestry region from Nigeria, Ghana, and Burkina Faso, whilst we observe some limited population structure with PCA. When we look at the copying vectors, we can see the subtle differences in copying that cause fine structure. To separate the 5 ethnic groups into clusters containing only other individuals from their own ethnic group of individuals. The exception to this are the Namcom and Kasem, who are very genetically similar and are merged into a single group, so consistent with results in European populations. European population chromosomes painting analysis of African groups can reveal subtle population structure that's hard to detect using approaches based on genotypes alone. Taken together, these observations motivate using haplotype-based approaches to characterize population relationship in addition to those which consider allele frequencies on their own. Allele frequencies differences show widespread evidence for admixture. Again, either we lying or the paper is erroneous, Avery.
Well, according to white supremacist ops, the paper is erroneous. So, well, actually, both is true. We're wrong, and the paper's wrong. Only the white supremacists are right. Only them.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny that Garfield has this guy cheering in his chats that's on Facebook calling black people monkeys and pre-Adamites and shit.
For real. It almost makes me wonder if Garfield thinks that we're nothing but monkeys and stuff. Like, you're not going against these people. You letting them cheer on this crap.
It says here, as argued above, a full analysis of admixture best leverages haplotype structure, and we return to this below to gain an initial understanding of admixture. We apply previously published approaches which analyze the correlations in allele frequencies within and between populations. The first approach, the 3 population test, estimates the proportion of shared genetic drift between the target population and 2 potential source populations to identify significant departures from the null model of no admixture. Negative values are indicative of canonical admixture events where the allele frequencies in the target population are intermediate between the 2 source populations, consistent with recent research. The majority, 83%, 40 out of 48, but not all, of the African group surveyed showed evidence of admixture. We do not infer admixture using this statistic in the Jola Masi, the Kasem, the Nakam, the Yorubas, the Sudanese, the Gumus, and the Juhansi. In most other groups, the most significant F3 statistics include either the Johansi or a 1 kgp European source. Niger Congo speaking groups from Central West and Southern Africa tend to show most significant statistics involving the Juhansi, whereas Western East African and Southern Khoisan speaking groups tended to show most significant statistics involving European sources, consistent with a recent analysis on a similar, albeit smaller, set of African populations. Second approach exploits the fact that correlations between allele frequencies along the genome decay over time as a result of recombination, linkage, I'm gonna fuck this word up. LD can be generated by admixture events. So the AGVP paper talks about this LD, and that's how they came up with the Yoruba having a Eurasian admixture less than 7.5 thousand years ago. The Fula having a Eurasian admixture less than 3,000 years ago, around about 3,000 years ago. The Jola, so on and so forth. They used the linkage disequilibrium. I can't say that word. LD, right? Can be generated by admixture events and leaves detectable signals in the genome that can be used to infer historical processes. Following Pickrell et al. 2014, the AGVP, we computed weighted admixture LD curves using the Alder package that and the HapMap recombination map to characterize the sources and timing of gene flow events. Specifically, we estimated the y-axis intercept amplitude of weighted LD curves for each target population using curves from an analysis where one of the sources was the target populations, and the other was separately each of the other non-self-reference populations. Theory predicts that the amplitude of these one reference curves becomes larger the more similar the non-self-reference population is to the true admixing source. As with the F3 analysis outlined above, for many of the sub-Saharan African populations, Eurasian and hunter-gatherer groups such as the Juhansi produce the largest amplitudes, reinforcing the contribution of these ancestry to our broad set of African populations. Remember, the paper says majority of Africans are admixed in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and the sources of this admixture are either hunter-gatherer or Eurasian. It says we investigated the evidence for more complex admixture using Mulder and implementation of Alder, which fits a mixture of exponentials to weighted LD curves to infer multiple admixture events. In figure 3A, for each target population, we show the ancestry region of two populations with the greatest Mulder curve amplitudes together with the date of admixture. For at most two events throughout, we convert time since admixture to generations to a date by assuming a generation time of 29. So if they say the Fulani have 29 generations, or no, I mean 10 generations of from to date back, then that admixture event will happen about 2,900 years ago. Because here we note that the inferred admixture dates indicate when gene flow occurred between populations, not the arrival of groups into an area, which may often be several generations earlier. So you got to keep that in mind too. Just because it shows you what time they may have admixed, that doesn't tell you what time they arrived in the locations in sub-Saharan Africa. By the way, here's the chart you wanted to break down.
Yeah,
right?
no, this is a good chart. I'm gonna pull it up on my screen. All right, let me rearrange my mic. All right, get to it right here. All right, here we are. So this is a really good chart. So if you see on A, we're going to look at this right here. These are the populations, the African populations that were examined, and we're going to focus more or so on the West African and Bantu populations. So certain populations we have, I'm not going to read them all, but basically we have the Jola, the Wolof, Mandinka, the Fulani, the Sarisari, Mandingo, the Bambara, the Akans, the Yoruba, Semi-Bantu, and Bantu. People like this. This is what we're going to look at, the dark blue and the light blue. So it has right here, first event and second event. I'm going to break that down to what it means. Right here, we have source 1, source 2 for the events. And then over here, we have some colors. And these colors represent ancestry regions. So we have in the dark blue, West African Niger Congo. That's what we see right here, the dark blue. Then we have Central West African Niger Congo. That's the light blue. And our focus, or my focus right now, is going to be more so on this yellowish green. I guess you call it lime, this lime color, which is Eurasia. So let's see what we see right here. We see that when it comes to the first event, we see a lot of this green, which is the Khoisan, and then we also see some blue, which is the Central West African. Now, if we look at the second event, we see, if we look at this second row right here, we see nothing but green. You see that, Yeshub, that lime green, should I say, that light green? This is Eurasia. So in the first event, we see that in the second row, we see nothing but Eurasia. All of it is Eurasia. Now let's go to the second event right here. If we look at the second event, we see again, nothing but Eurasia. So let's actually scroll down so we can kind of break down, because what do these dots mean? What's these dots and what are these lines? Well, let me scroll down and explain that. So these dots represent time frames, timelines from 2000 CE to 0 to 2000 BCE and 5000 BCE. So let's scroll back up to these West African populations. We see that most of these dots is basically, let me scroll back down really quick. We see most of these dots ranges from 0, which is basically the first century, to 2000 BC. Let's just scroll up and looking at this line right here. Oops. All right, we see right here. We see, for instance, for the Fulani, and we see right here with these populations in 0 CE is when admixture happened with Eurasia. Now we see right here Mandinka, Wolof, and Jolo. Where is the line for them? We're going to focus right here. Scroll down. Is right here in between 0 CE and 2000 BC. So this would basically be 1000 BC, where we see Eurasian admixture with Mandinka and also with the Wolof, which is in between. And then right here, the Jola is a little bit older. Let's scroll down a little bit. So that's close to 2000 BC. So all these dots, and then you see a lot of dots right here. A lot of this is common era in between the first century and 2000 CE. So basically, all these dots represent Eurasian admixture within the common era and the BC era. And so right here is a chart that kind of shows it as well. It shows from 2000 CE, common era, all the way to 5000 BC. A lot of the admixture seems to have taken place within the, I guess you can say, from like the Iron Age to the Common Era is when we see a lot of this Eurasian admixture. Is there anything you want to bring out in this?
Yes, if you look at that chart on the side where it gives the ancestry region, it has what they have a black outline that means main event ancestry. And as you can see in the West African Niger Congo populations, the Wolof has a main event Eurasian, two of them actually. We have a first event and second event, main
Yeah.
event, ancestral event that involves Eurasian gene flow. The Mandinkai, okay, however you say that, they have one as well. The Sariahule, I suppose that's how you say that. They have a main event Eurasian. The Fula, of course, they have two main events Eurasian admixture events. The Malinke have two regular Eurasian events. The Serere have also the same Eurasian event, and the Manjago have it. Like most of these West African groups have these main Eurasian ancestry events, according to this paper.
Yep.
Then we go down to the East Africans; they have it too. Main Eurasian, anything with the black outline is a main ancestry event.
Mm-hmm.
So West Africans do indeed have Eurasian ancestry. There's just no way around it.
Yep.
Unless you want to say, oh, the paper's erroneous and you guys are liars and everything you say is a lie, and I want to believe in my jungle brother doctrine, then go right ahead.
Back to your screen, by the way.
All right, so that's a great breakdown. There's other ancestry here as well, but my brother want to focus on the Eurasian. But you also see East African, Afro-Asiatic here as well. What are we gonna call that? Violet. You know,
Which color?
this one here. It's like a pinkish violet, maybe.
Oh yeah, for the South. You talking about the South African Niger Congo, or
The East African Afro-Asiatic.
oh
But you
yeah, it
look
looks
at
like a pink or whatever. Yeah.
it does play a slight role in the Malinke, as you see there. So
By the way, if you want to zoom in, you can, because I'm back on your screen.
yeah, so if you look, hold on. If I go, I'll share this tab here. You can look at these colors over here: source 1, source 2, and the first event, source 1, source 3. Like you see these long Eurasian bars, but you see minor Khoisan here And I think this is the Malinki too. Yeah. Malinki have minor East African contributions here as well. East African Afro-Asiatic contributions and Nilo-Saharan. But you do see that East African Afro-Asiatic related ancestry within West Africans too. So that's noteworthy and pointing out. And of course, East Africans, the Luya are Bantu brothers, but they have a Eurasian event there as well. Bada boom, bada bam. Let's go. Go back. You guys check this paper out. I put it in the chat, by the way. You guys can study it on your own time. All right, let's go down. Talk about this paper, this graph. Inference of admixture in sub-Saharan Africa using Mulder. Again, why do we see Eurasian DNA in these groups if they've been so isolated and static as you guys say? All right, so let's go down. In general, we find that groups from similar ancestry regions tend to have inferred admixture events at similar times and involving similar sources, which suggests that genetic variation has been. Let's run. Did that again. It says, which suggests that genetic variation has been shaped by shared historical events. For every event, the curves with the greatest amplitudes involve a population from a usually non-Khoisan African ancestry region on one side and either a Eurasian or Khoisan population on the other. To provide more detail on the composition of the admixture sources, we compared Mulder curve amplitudes using source groups from different ancestry regions. In general, we were unable to precisely define the ancestry of the African source of admixture, as curves involving populations from multiple different ancestry regions were not statistically different from each other. Conversely, comparisons of Mulder curves when the second source of admixture was Eurasian dark yellow or Khoisan green showed that these groups were usually the single best surrogate for the second source of admixture. Mulder uses an uses as input genetic map to model the expected decay and linkage disequilibrium LD. I cannot say that word. We observed a large amount of shared LD at short genetic distances between different African populations. Such patterns may result from population genetic processes other than admixture, such as shared demographic history and population bottlenecks. Now, that's huge. Shared demographic history means you're migrating with these people, which is what we infer. We migrated with those groups because we were once closer to those groups, like in North Africa and the ancient Near East. It says here in the main model analysis, we present short range LD is removed by computing curves at genetic distances where they are correlated between target and reference populations. We provide supplementary analysis where the setting was overridden by allowing Mulder to start computing LD decay curves at short genetic distances, irrespective of any short range correlation in LD between populations. The main difference between the two analyses is that we do not observe previously reported ancient admixture events in Central West African groups without allowing curves to be computed from 0.5 cm. Centimorgan's interpretation of such results is therefore challenging. Inference of older events relies on modeling the decay of LD over short genetic distances because recombination has had more time to break down correlations in allele frequencies between neighboring SNPs. We investigated the effect of using European and Central West African specific recombination maps on the dating inference. While dating inferred using the CEU map were consistent with those using the HapMap recombination map, when using the African map, dates were consistently older, although still generally within the last 7,000 years. There was also variability in the number of inferred admixture events for some populations between the different map analyses. Many West African groups show evidence of admixture within the last 4,000 years involving African and Eurasian sources. Let me read that again. Many West African groups show evidence of admixture within the last 4,000 years involving Africans and Eurasian sources. The Masi and Burkina Faso have the oldest inferred data of admixture at roughly 5,000 BCE. Across East Africa, Niger Congo speakers Orange, we infer admixture within the last 4,000 years ago, and often within the last 1,000 years ago, involving Eurasian sources on the one hand and African sources containing ancestry from Niger Congo speaking African groups from the West on the other. Despite
Hold on,
events,
we gotta break that down. We gotta break this down. Hold on. So let me pull it up on my screen real quick. Let me scroll to it. Because that right there is fairly interesting. It's gonna look a little weird when I pull it up on my screen because it's gonna be kind of cut in half.
it's gonna be
But here
you
we
doctor.
go.
That's what you be trying to do. You doctor information, you lie, you manipulate.
So it says many West African groups. Hold on, let me fix my mic. Show evidence of admixture within the last 4,000 years involving African and Eurasian sources. By the way, 4,000 years ago, it was around the time period of the Bronze Age and Iron Age. By the way, so the Mosi from Burkina Faso have the oldest inferred admixture have the oldest inferred data of admixture. And Burkina Faso, I believe, is in West Africa. Scroll down really quick, and I'm going to break down this chart here in a second because it's also a good one. But it says at roughly 5,000 BCE. Across East Africa, Niger Congo speakers Orange, we infer admixture within the last 4,000 years and often within the last 1,000 years, involving Eurasian sources on the one hand, and African sources containing ancestry from other Niger Congo speaking African groups from the West on the other side. So these Niger Congo populations carry Eurasian DNA. Very fascinating. But I'll let it go back to your screen because there's a chart that's actually going to break down how much Eurasian DNA that these groups have, and this chart is also going to show again the time frame of this admixture event. So I gave it back to you.
Did you say West African groups have Eurasian ancestry as well? Is that what you're implying here? Because
100%.
if you are a liar and the truth isn't in you.
Okay. I guess these scientists are wrong then, but got it.
Yeah. Didn't you hear Jungle Brother? Jungle nigga the other day? We all come from the jungles and nothing else. We're just that. And, unto perpetuity. So let's keep reading here. It says, despite events between African and Eurasian sources appearing older in Nilo-Saharan Afro-Asiatic speakers from East Africa, we see a similar signal of very recent Central West African ancestry in a number of Khoisan groups from Southern Africa, such as the Kwi and Gui and Ghana together, and the Malawi-like sources of ancestry and recent admixture events in East African Niger Congo speakers. Somebody said that's from slavery, Solomonic slave trade. Most events involve sources where Eurasian groups gave the largest amplitudes and consider. You know what, Avery? Here's another thing. The reason why you're saying these things is because you don't love yourself.
Wow, that's very interesting.
So arguing with
what the science says is not loving yourself.
They argue with their emotions and not their logic. Right. So it's got to be about love. It's got to be about a feeling, not the data itself, not rationale. Who needs that? We can just argue with our feelings. It says here, most events involve sources where Eurasian groups have the largest amplitudes. Considering this observation, it is important to note that the amplitude of LD curves will partly be determined by the extent to which a reference population had differentiated from the target. Due to the genetic drift associated with the out of Africa bottleneck and subsequent expansion, Eurasian groups will tend to generate the largest curve amplitudes, even if the proportion of this ancestry in the true admixture source is small. It says, to some extent, this also applies to the Khoisan groups, who are relatively differentiated from other African groups. You hear that? Khoisan are not the same as other African groups. We're not all the same, man. Y'all treat all of sub-Saharan Africa as being homogenous, and that's a damn lie. It says, in light of this, and the observation that curves involving groups from different ancestry regions are often not different from each other, it is difficult to infer the proportion or nature of the African Khoisan or Eurasian admixing sources, only that the sources themselves contained African Khoisan or Eurasian ancestry. Moreover, given uncertainty in the dating of admixture when using different maps and other parameters, these results should be taken as a guide to the general structure of genetic relationships between African groups rather than a precise description of the gene flow events. Modeling gene flow with haplotypes. Chromosome painting analysis provides an alternative approach to inferring admixture events, which directly uses the similarity in haplotypes between pairs of individuals. Evidence of haplotype sharing suggests that the ancestors of two individuals must have been geographically proximal at some point in the past. You hear that? Evidence of haplotype sharing. You got to be close to each other to have sex with each other, man. I mean, it's that simple. Like I said, you're not gonna be able to send an email. You're not gonna be able to Wi-Fi over some damn DNA, man. This is common sense shit, right? Like RV88 going to sub-Saharan Africa. Obviously, they moved there. They mix with the local population or the local women. They didn't mail their motherfucking DNA over.
No, all that's a lie. All a person has to do, all a man has to do is ejaculate into a leaf and then send it over to the next tribe all the way in Eurasia, and that's it.
That's how they get the DNA. That
Yeah, they
explains
just pass
everything,
it
bro.
along.
Wasn't no migration going on. Wasn't no demography going on. No demographic events. None of that. This is what happened. You know, Wi-Fi. Goofies, man. It says here, evidence of haplotype sharing suggests that the ancestors of the two individuals must have been geographically proximal at some point in the past, and the distance over which haplotype sharing extends along chromosomes is inversely related to how far in the past co-ancestry events have occurred. We can use copy and vectors inferred through chromosome painting to help identify those populations that share ancestry with a recipient group by fitting each vector as a mixture of all other population vectors. Figure 4a shows the contribution that each ancestry region makes to these mixtures. Almost all groups can be described as mixtures of ancestry from different regions. For example, the copying vector of the Bantu ethnic group from Cameroon is best described as a combination of 40% Central West African Niger Congo, 30% Eastern Niger Congo, 25% Southern Niger Congo, and the remaining 5% from West African Niger Congo and Khoisan speaking groups. The mixture model approach is useful for describing co-ancestry between populations, which can result from both admixture and shared evolutionary history. And here's that chart here. Some of the same stuff here. You still see the Eurasia component in West Africa and the West African component. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good chart again. Like you just said, we see Eurasia in all these West Central African populations, and also the timeline is interesting because it's generally within this line. So let's just scroll down and see when this was. Oops, on it. Let me go back up because I kind of accidentally messed up. So we see that it's basically in between this line right here, and this line right here. This is the three lines that we're going to look at. So let's scroll down. And basically, this Eurasian admixture is in between 1000 CE, Common Era, all the way 1000 BC. So this is the general time frame in which this Eurasian DNA, let me fix my mic, is in which this Eurasian DNA is being introduced. 1000 CE to 1000 BC, which, by the way, is the biblical time period. But anyways, so this is fairly interesting. And we see right over here, it shows like admixture percentage. And you see that this Eurasian, this is the lime color right there, Eurasian DNA is within all of these people. Obviously, the Fulani have the most, but we do see that the Eurasian DNA is present within all these West Central African populations like Mandinka and Bambara and Seri Seri and Wolof and Jola and all these other West Africans. I'm not going to name them all. We see that it's present. Let me scroll just in case y'all can't see. See that lime color right there? That's Eurasia. All these West African populations have it. Let's go over here. See? So yeah. Going back to your screen.
Yeah, yours look yellow over here, and mine look lime green.
Really?
Yeah, to me, look, that little lime green on here. Yours is yellow, but it's the same thing. It's showing the same thing.
Yeah.
To me, it looks like lime green, you know. Anyway, let's keep reading. Let's go down. Let's go down. I don't want to be on here too late. All right. To explicitly test for characteristic admixture, we applied Globetrotter, which is an extension of the mixture model approach described above. Admixture inference can be challenged for a number of reasons. The true admixing source population is often not well represented by a single sample population. Admixture could have occurred in several bursts or over a sustained period of time. Multiple groups may have come together as a complex convolution of admixture events. Globetrotter aims to overcome some of these challenges, and in part by using painted chromosomes to explicitly model the correlation structure among nearby SNPs, but also by allowing the sources of admixture admixture themselves to be mixed. In addition, the approach has been shown to be relatively insensitive to the genetic map used, and therefore potentially provides a more robust inference of admixture events, the ancestries involved, and their dates. Globetrotter uses the recombination distance between chromosomal chunks of the same ancestry to infer the time since historical admixture has occurred. Throughout, we refer to the target population as recipients. Any other sample population used to describe the recipient population admixture events as surrogates and populations used to paint both recipients and surrogate populations as donors, including closely related individuals in chromosome painting analysis, can cause the resulting painting chromosomes to be dominated by donors from these close genealogical relationships, which can mask signals of admixture in the genome. To help ameliorate this, we painted chromosomes for the Globetrotter analysis by using Chrome Painter to paint each individual from a recipient group with the set of donors, which did not include individuals from within their own ancestry region. We additionally painted all 59 other surrogate populations with the same set of non-local donors and used these copying vectors together with the non-local painted chromosomes to infer admixture. Using this approach, we found evidence of recent admixture in all African populations. You know, that right there. All African populations have admixture signals, man, which we read earlier was either from the Khoisan or Eurasians. To summarize these events, we show a composition of admixing source groups as bar plots for each population colored by the contribution for each African ancestry region in Eurasia, alongside the inferred date with confidence interval determined by bootstrapping. And the estimated proportion of admixture for each event, we also identify the best matching donor population to the admixture sources. So that's the graph we just read. Direct and indirect gene flow from Eurasia back into Africa. Both Mulder and Globetrotter analysis identify Eurasian gene flow in many but not all African populations. In several groups from South Africa and all from Central West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon, we infer admixture between groups that are best represented by contemporary populations residing in Africa. As Globetrotter is designed to identify the most recent admixture events, this observation does not rule out gene flow from Eurasia back into these groups, but does suggest that subsequent movements between African groups were more important in generating current genetic diversity in these groups. We also do not observe Eurasian ancestry in all East African Niger Congo speakers, instead finding more evidence for co-ancestry with Afro-Asiatic speaking groups. As we show later, Afro-Asiatic populations have a significant amount of ancestry from outside of Africa. So the observation of this ancestry in several African groups identifies a route by which Eurasian ancestry may have indirectly entered the continent. Characterize admixture sources. Admixtures allows Globetrotter to infer whether Eurasian haplotubes are likely to have come directly into sub-Saharan Africa, in which case the admixture source will contain only Eurasian surrogates. or whether Eurasian haplotypes were brought indirectly together with sub-Saharan groups. In West African Niger Congo speakers from the Gambia and Mali, we infer admixture involving minor admixture sources which contain mostly Eurasian and Central West African ancestry, which most closely match the contemporary copying vectors of Northern European populations, or the Fulani. Fulani, a nomadic pastoralist group found across West Africa, were sampled in the Gambia at the very western edge of their current range and had previously reported genetic affinities with Niger, Congo-speaking, Sudanic, Saharan, and Eurasian populations. Consistent with the results of our mixture model analysis, admixture in the Fulani differs from other populations from this region, with sources containing greater amounts of Eurasian and Afro-Asiatic ancestry, but appears to have occurred during roughly the same period.
And by the way, some African Americans descend from the Fulani.
That's a
A
fact.
good portion of them do.
That's a fact. So you can see recipient regions here: Afro-Asiatic, Saharan, Khoisan, and the frequency of each group, right? So West Africans, as we can see down here, the color code here, West African component, Afro-Asiatic component, and you can see the time frame on the bottom of the graph when we start seeing these things. So of course you're going to see mostly West African there. Central West Africa, same thing, but you see a little Nalo here and there. South African, of course, you're going to see a lot of, and this is Common Era too, 0 Common Era and then BCE. See a lot of South African there. Nothing's too special, nothing too crazy about that, right? But you do see slight East Asian, South Asian components, very slight here in this chart. All right, let's go down. Timeline of recent admixture in Sub-Saharan Africa. Fulani represent the best matching surrogate to the minor source of recent admixture in Najola and Manjago, which we interpret as resulting not from specific admixture from into these groups, but because of the mix of African and Eurasian ancestries and contemporary Fulani is the best proxy for the minor sources of admixture in this region, with the exception of the Fulani themselves. The major admixture source in groups across the region is a similar mixture of African ancestries that most closely matches contemporary Gambian and Malian surrogates, suggesting ancestry from a common West African group within the last 3,000 years. The Ghana Empire flourished in West Africa between 300 and 1200 CE and is one of the earliest recorded African states. Whilst its origins are uncertain, it is clear that the trade in gold, salt, and slaves, yes, West Africans sold slaves, right, across the Sahara, perhaps from as early as the Roman period, as well as evolving agricultural technologies were the driving forces behind its development. It is possible these interactions through North Africa, catalyzed by trade across the Sahara, allowed gene flow from Europe and North Africa back into West Africa. We infer more direct admixture from Eurasian sources in two populations from Kenya, where specifically South Asian populations are the most closely matched surrogates to the minor sources of admixture. Interestingly, the Chonyi and the Kwama are located in the Kenyan Swahili coast, a region where medieval trade across the Indian Ocean is historically documented, which might explain the Asian admixture. Alternatively, notes that the expansion of the Arab shipping down the east coast of Africa in the 10th century CE masked the Austronesian influence of the resident coastal culture. The implication is that Austronesians, who are known to have contributed genes to the Madagascar population, may also have been in East Africa about this time. Further work on this group will help to understand whether the events we observed in the Chonyi and the Kwama represent the first evidence of an Austronesian impact in the mainland of Africa.
Wait, hold on. You have to go back to the last paragraph because there's something I want to point out that's very interesting. Yeah, keep scrolling up. Right there in this paragraph. All right, stop. And the last two sentences, can you read that? Starting at whilst its origins.
Yeah, whilst its origins are uncertain.
Well, actually, sorry. Go back to the Ghana Empire. right there. That right there. Yeah.
The Ghana Empire flourished in West Africa between 300 and 1200 CE and is one of the earliest recorded African states. Whilst its origins are uncertain, it is clear that trade in gold, salt, and slaves across the Sahara, perhaps from as early as the Roman period, as well as evolving agricultural technologies, were the driving forces behind its development. It is possible these interactions through North Africa, catalyzed by trade across the Sahara, allowed gene flow from Europe and North Africa. I'm sorry, y'all. Let's see if I can get this off.
Into West Africa. That's probably what it's going to say. So that's very interesting.
Back into West Africa, yeah.
Or back into West Africa. So that's very interesting right there. Those three sentences from this paragraph. And the reason why this is interesting is because it is well known historically. Oops, hold on. It's well known historically that Romans did go into sub-Saharan Africa. There was trade routes from North Africa into sub-Saharan Africa. For instance, here it is. Here are the different time periods and the different types of people, or I guess you can say Roman generals that ventured Roman expeditions into Lake Chad and Western Africa. So they went to these places, Gayo right there, and Lake Chad, and places close to Timbuktu, and like that, all the way starting from North Africa and places like Mauritania and what would be Libya and places of those regions. When y'all get a chance, y'all can read about it, but it kind of makes sense what this paper is talking about. There was Romans, North African populations, trade routes in North Africa to West Africa. And a lot of people try to say, oh, the Sahara Desert, no way people could have traveled. Well, you did have trade routes and you did have oases. And at an oasis, you can easily set up a base camp and then travel further south. And just as much as people would have traveled from the north to the south, you would have had people traveling from the south to the north. So yeah, there are trade routes, and this just, it all makes sense. It all fits very well.
People migrate, man. There are no static populations.
Yep. And the Sahara Desert, going with the Sahara Desert, no one could have traveled it. A talking point is it basically makes no sense because we already have maps of the trade routes. We already know the Romans who traveled to West Africa. Like you can't really get around this. I mean, even if you want to go down even if you want to go with the idea of art and images and stuff like that, because people love images, you know, we even have depictions of quote unquote African peoples in Rome. We have plenty of depictions of African type peoples in the Roman Empire. You can go to the article from History Encyclopedia. Hold on, you can go to this article right here, the Roman Empire in West Africa. It talks about African populations being in Rome and things of that nature. So West African specifically populations being in Rome. So yeah, there's like this idea of West African isolation, that nobody knew of West Africa until the Arab slave trade and the European transatlantic slave trade, is just untrue. There was people definitely knew about populations in West Africa. It's dumb to say otherwise. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's just,
you're a donut. You're so stupid. You're so stupid. You're stupid. Dumb.
That's what you are if you think West Africa was isolated for the past 10,000 years.
Yeah, this shit's stupid as fuck, man. Garfield talking about nobody crossing the damn Sahara. All right, whatever, man. We lying. You right. Keep preaching to your fucking.
Yeah, all the historians and all the geneticists are wrong. It's funny how what the historians were saying lines up exactly with what the genetics say.
Yep.
But you can go ahead and go back.
Yeah, I got a lot of reading to do left. So let me go here. Go hyperdrive mode. It's getting late. I want to go to bed. So I'm about to go to hyperdrive mode, man. It says here in Camby, the third group from the coastal Kenya, we infer two events. The more recent one involving local groups, and the earlier event involving a European-like source. In Tanzanian groups from the same ancestry region, we infer admixture during the same period, this time involving minor admixture sources with Afro-Asiatic ancestry in the Giriama and Mizuya. Although the proportion of admixture from these minor sources differ, the major sources of admixture in East African Niger Congo speakers are similar, containing a mix of Southern Niger Congo, Malawi, Central West African, Afro-Asiatic, and Nilo-Saharan ancestries. These events may be an indirect route for European-like gene flow into East Africa. See that? So you got a European gene flow into East Africa, an early one too, as we just read. It says in the Afro-Asiatic speaking population of East Africa, we infer admixture involving sources containing mostly Eurasian ancestry, which most closely matches the Tuscans. Visualizing the temporal distribution of admixture contributions shows that this ancestry appears to have entered the Horn of Africa in two waves, circa 1800 and 0 CE, as a result of admixture in the Afar, 326 CE, 7 to 587 CE, the Walata, 286 CE, 8 BC to 602 CE, the Tigray, 36 CE, 196 BCE to 240 CE, and the RA 689 BC to 965 to 297 BC being arranged there. There are no Middle Eastern groups in our analysis, and this group of events may represent previously observed migrations from the Arabian Peninsula at the same time. Although Afro-Asiatic and Nilo-Saharan speakers were sampled from the same part of East Africa, the ancestry of major sources of admixture of the former do not contain much Nilo-Saharan ancestry and are predominantly Afro-Asiatic. In Nilo-Saharan speaking groups, the Sudanese, the Gamuz, Arawak, and Maasai, we infer greater proportions of West and East African Niger Congo speaking surrogates and the major sources of admixture, indicating both that Eurasian admixture occurred into groups with mixed Niger Congo and Nilo-Saharan / Afro-Asiatic ancestry, and a clear recent link with Central and West African groups, which likely comes from like the Bantu expansion, by the way. As here, lastly, in the two Khoisan speaking groups from South Africa, the Komani and Karet G, we infer a very recent direct admixture involving Eurasian groups, most similar to Northern European populations, with dates aligned to European colonial period settlement in Southern Africa, taken together in addition to Mulder above. These observations suggest that gene flow back into Africa from Eurasia has been coming around the edges of the continent and has been sustained over the last 3,000 years. It can also be attributed to specific and different historical time periods. Population movements within Africa and the Bantu expansion. Before discussing the impact of the Bantu expansion, we highlight three inferred admixture events involving sources unconnected to that migration. We infer admixture in the Juhansi, a Sun group from Nambia, involving a source that closely matches a local Southern African Khoisan group, the Karaji, and an East African Afro-Asiatic, specifically Somali source at 558 CE. Another older event in the Maasai, 254 BC, also involves an Afro-Asiatic source. In contrast, the minor source in the event inferred in the Luya most closely matches Nilo-Saharan groups. The recent data of this event implies the Eastern Niger Congo speaking groups, for example, the Luya, interacted with nearby Nilo-Saharan speakers after the putative arrival of Bantu-speaking groups to Eastern Africa, which we discussed below. Most of the sample groups in this study, and indeed most sub-Saharan African-speaking language, belong to the Niger-Congo linguistic phylum. A sub-branch of this group are the so-called Bantu languages, a group of approximately 500 very closely related languages that are of particular interest because they are spoken by the vast majority of Africans south of the line between southern Nigeria, Cameroon, and Somalia. Given their high similarity and broad geographic range, it's likely that Bantu languages spread across Africa quickly. Bantu languages can themselves be divided into three major groups: Northwestern, which are spoken by groups near to the Proto-Bantu heartland of Nigeria / Cameroon; Western Bantu languages spoken by groups situated down the west coast of Africa, and Eastern, which are spoken across East and Central Africa. Whilst there is linguistic and archaeological consensus that the Bantu heartland was in the general region of southern Nigeria and Cameroon, it is unclear whether Eastern Bantu languages were a primary branch that split off before the Western groups began to spread south, or whether this occurred after the start of the movement south. In a study based on glottochronology suggests that the expansion started 5,000 years ago, while the estimates based on linguistic diversity are slightly later, around 4,000 years ago. So when you see expansion starting at 5 to 4,000 years ago, that is solely based on linguistic arguments. How long the language took to develop and the branches thereof are the downstream branches of the language to develop. That's how they come up with that 5,000-year-old number, as we just seen here. I covered that in a live before. This latter date agrees with with the breakthrough of Neolithic technology such as tools and pottery in the archaeology of the Cameroon Proto-Bantu heartlands, and perhaps further south, linking the spread of technology and farming with the Bantu expansion. The early split hypothesis suggests that the Eastern Bantu migrated directly east from Cameroon 2.5 thousand years ago, along the border north of the Congo rainforest to the Great Lakes region of East Africa. The late split hypothesis, on the other hand, suggests that there was an initial spread south through the equatorial rainforest, with a subgroup splitting east under the rainforest, arriving later in East Africa, potentially around 2,000 years ago. Regardless of the exact route, the expansion spread south, arriving in southern Africa by the first millennium CE. Recent phylogenetic linguistic analysis shows that the relationships between contemporary language better match predictions based on a late split hypothesis and observations supported by genetic analysis. Current data set does not cover all of Africa. In particular, it contains no hunter-gatherer groups outside of southern Africa and no representation of Western Bantu except the Herero from Namibia. Nevertheless, we explored whether our admixture approach could be used to gain insight into the Bantu expansion. Specifically, we wanted to see whether the dates of admixture and composition of admixture sources were consistent with either of the two major models of the Bantu expansion. In the remaining discussion, we make the following assumption. When we observe ancestry from contemporary groups residing in Cameroon, Semi-Bantu, and Bantu, this is a proxy for direct gene flow from the origin of the Bantu expansion. Alternatively, higher proportions of ancestry from southern or eastern Niger Congo speakers are the result of subsequent indirect gene flow through these groups, which we use together with the time of admixture to relate to the Bantu expansion. We note that our interpretation may change with future analysis involving populations from relatively undersampled central southern Africa. Major sources of admixture in East African Niger Congo speakers have both Central, West, and Southern Niger Congo ancestry, although it's predominantly the latter. If admixture in Eastern Niger Congo speakers results from early movements directly from Central West Africa, Cameroon surrogates, then we would expect to see sources with predominantly Central West African ancestry. However, all East African Niger Congo speakers that we sample have admixture ancestry from a southern group, the Malawi, within the last 2,000 years, suggesting that the Malawi is more closely related to their Bantu ancestors than Central West Africans on their own. In the SC Bantu, and Amashosha from East Southern Africa, we observe reciprocal admixture events involving major sources most similar to East African Niger Congo speakers. And West Southern Africa, on the other hand, we infer two admixture events in the Herero and a single date in the Khoisan speaking Kui. So this is all common era stuff, as you guys can see on the screen, within the last 2,000 years for both admixture events. It says both of which involve sources with high proportions of ancestry from Cameroon. And a third, West Southern African group, the Shun. From Angola, who do not speak a Bantu language, we also infer admixture from a Cameroon-like source at around the same time as the Kui. The putative Bantu admixture events in Malawi and the Herero occur before those in the Shun and Kui. This suggests a separate, more recent arrival for Bantu ancestry and West Southern compared to East Southern Africa, with the former coming directly down the west coast of Africa and the latter from an earlier interaction in Central Southern Africa. further explore Bantu ancestry in Eastern and Southern Africa, we performed additional globetrotter analysis where we restricted the surrogate populations used to infer admixture. To specifically identify ancestry from Cameroon, this analysis allows us to ask whether the indirect Bantu ancestry we observe in East and Southern Niger Congo speakers can be traced back to the origin of the expansion. When we restrict East African Niger Congo speakers from having admixture surrogates from either within their ancestry region or Malawi, the sources of admixture mainly contain surrogates from the other non-Malawi Southern African Niger Congo groups, reinforcing the relationship between Southern and East African Niger Congo speakers, with the exception of the Herero. Southern African Niger Congo speakers show the reverse relationship, choosing East African surrogates when local groups are removed from the inference. Only when both Eastern and Southern African groups, Southern African Niger Congo speakers, were restricted from having surrogates from themselves and each other, did the admixture sources contain significant proportions of Cameroon ancestry. By contrast, regardless of which surrogates are removed, the Herero also have inferred major admixture sources that contain a majority of Cameroon ancestry. We discussed the restricted surrogate analysis in further detail in the supplementary files. In individuals from Malawi, we infer a multiple way event with an older date, 34631 CE, involving a minor source which mostly contains ancestry from Cameroon. And real quick side note, I'm trying to get through this because it's getting late, but this show a lot of these Bantu groups is modern, it's very common era. West African groups, very common era. What were they doing before these times? Obviously, we're not here because we don't see the evidence for it. Most of this stuff is common era. It says involving a minor source which mostly contains ancestry for Cameroon, which is, as mentioned, at a similar date to the event seen in Herero from Nubia. This Bantu admixture appears to have preceded that in other Southern Africans by a few hundred years. Given that ancestry from the Malawi is often observed in large proportions in the admixture sources of East and Southern African Niger Congo speakers, in its position between Eastern and the most Southern groups, Malawi represents the closest proxy in our data set for the intermediate group that split from the Western Bantu. We also see an admixture source in Malawi with a significant proportion of non-Bantu ancestry which we do not observe in the mixture model analysis, but which is also evident in the other East Southern Niger Congo speakers, implying that gene flow must have occurred between the expanding Bantus and the resident hunter-gatherer groups. In summary, the early date of Bantu admixture in Malawi is present as an admixture surrogate across Eastern and Southern Africa, and the observation of later direct Central West African Bantu admixture in Western South African groups highlight the complex dynamics and multiple ways of migration associated with the movement of Bantu agriculturists from the region around Cameroon into Southern and Eastern Africa. Moreover, our analysis, in addition to evidence from linguistic phylogenetics, provides genetic support for the late split hypothesis, suggesting that agriculturalist Bantus migrated south around the Congo rainforest before traveling east. A haplotype-based model of gene flow in sub-Saharan Africa. Our haplotype-based analysis support a complex picture of recent historical gene flow in Africa, using genetics to infer historical demography will always depend on the available samples and methods used to infer population relationships. Our aim here is to highlight the key gene flow events that chromosome painting allows us to detect and describe their effect on the structure of co-ancestry. So do you want to go into this map here? Imagery?
Yeah.
Take this map down for them.
All right. I'm going to, hold on, let me change the screen. All right. So, all right. So I'm going to first focus on D. And basically what this is showing, well, I'll just focus. Yeah, let me focus on one by one. So this is D. I'm going to focus on this one first. And this is just showing admixture. It even says up here, Eurasian gene flow into Africa. And what direction do we see most of this gene flow coming from? It's coming from the North Africa, and places in the Mediterranean. I'll just say the Mediterranean. So you see these arrows. I don't know if you can see. You see these arrows? They're pointing from the Mediterranean or North Africa all the way down to where? East Africa. And what's this over here? Arrows pointing also to West Africa. So we see this Mediterranean, this Eurasian gene flow, basically starting in the Mediterranean or North Africa, going into West Africa and East Africa. Up here, let's go to A. It talks about Bantu gene flow within the last 2,000 years. And we see it spreading all across sub-Saharan Africa. Same thing with the East Bantu gene flow. It's spreading pretty much in all directions in sub-Saharan Africa, going to East Africa, going back to West Africa, going to South Africa, places like that. And then we have East to West gene flow. And this is basically populations from West Africa going to East Africa. We see a lot of this gene flow going on. And this again shows that West African populations were not just stuck in sub-Saharan Africa, but indeed they did go to the Horn of Africa, where there are a lot of Afro-Asiatic populations. So we see gene flow all around, east to west, north to south, etc., etc. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Anything you want to add when it comes to these? I think the most interesting is D, chart D and C. I can go back to your.
C is good, man, because a lot of people think West Africans have nothing to do East Africans with East Africans, and that could be further from the truth, right? So, like the brother said, the Eurasian signals do come from North Africa. That's where we were at, right? At one point, we covered that paper of us being in the Green Sahara at one point, and then we made our way down southwards into Western Central Africa, right? And that overlaps well with these signals of Eurasian DNA, as we're seeing spilling over into Africa, going westward and eastward, right? So let's go down and just read that relevant portion.
Yeah, this right here is some of the best bits and pieces of the paper.
Right. So over the last 3,000 years, admixture events involving sources containing Northern European ancestry is seen on the western periphery of Africa, in the Gambia and Mali. This ancestry in West Africa is likely to be the result of more gradual diffusion of DNA across the Sahara from North Africa and across the Iberian Peninsula, and not via the Middle East. So this one is talking about the Northern European DNA that we see here. As in later scenario, we would expect to see Spanish, IBS, and Italian TSI in the admixture sources. We do see limited Southern European ancestry in West Africa in the Fulani, suggesting that some Eurasian ancestry may also have entered West Africa via Northeast Africa.
Now that part's very well. Actually, I'll save that for when I reveal my DNA. I'll save that.
Okay, all right. Number 5, several waves of Mediterranean Middle Eastern ancestry into Northeast Africa, that's why it's important if it's coming that direction. It's connecting you with the Near East. So we observed Southern European gene flow into East African and Afro-Asiatic speakers over a more prolonged time period over the last 3,000 years, with a major wave 2,000 years ago. We do not have Middle Eastern groups in our analysis, so we observe Italian ancestry in the minor sources of admixture. The Tuscans are the closest Eurasian group to the Middle East. It's consistent with previous results using the same examples, and as you can see.
By the way, Tuscans are a Mediterranean population.
Right, and that's their closest. That's why they have the TSI going more in that direction, and the IBS going in that direction too. And they have the IBS going in that direction here. So now.
That's also why the Roman quote was pretty interesting, because Tuscans are in Italy, and when it comes to like Greek and Italian populations, they have a lot of Middle Eastern DNA, and obviously that's what the paper said. They're the closest to the Middle East because Italians and Romans, Italians, Greeks, they have the most Middle Eastern admixture in the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm. It says here the Tuscans are a close Eurasian group to the Middle East, and is consistent with previous results using the samples, indicating the region as a major route for the back migration of Eurasian DNA into sub-Saharan Africa. All right. The late split.
So basically, you can say that it's a Mediterranean type of DNA entering into sub-Saharan Africa, and this Mediterranean DNA is genetically closest to Middle Eastern populations.
Yeah. So I'll let y'all read every breakdown. We read the two important. For the sake of time, we're gonna go down and go to the rest of this.
I mean, tomorrow we can just touch on this last bit, and then we can get into the pygmies if you want.
Yeah. So
'Cause
number
that's the
nine,
last one.
number nine, ancient Eurasian gene flow back into Africa and shared hunter-gatherer ancestry. The F3 statistics show the general presence of ancient Eurasian and or Khoisan ancestry across much of sub-Saharan Africa. We typically interpret these results as being consistent with recent research suggesting very old, less than 10,000-year-old migrations back into Africa from Eurasia. With the ubiquitous hunter-gatherer ancestry across the continent, possibly related to the inhabited populations present across Africa prior to these more recent movements. So before, like the AGVP project points out, sub-Saharan Africa used to be inundated with groups that were Sun-related peoples. There was no Bantu or Niger Congo related peoples at that time. When you go back into the Deep Holocene, something happens afterwards. You start seeing E markers penetrate in Western Central Africa and places of that nature.
Which is very interesting because if you read the not papers, but if you read the I think they're letters, you can technically call them, or the books of Herodotus or Homer, one of the two. They talk about a troglodyte population that lived in North Africa and that their language was clicking. I can find that if y'all want, but basically it would seem like there was indeed like a Khoisan population in North Africa even as far back as like with the Greco-Roman period, because I distinctively remember Herodotus talking about that, a click-speaking people in the mountains in North Africa.
Right. It says here, future research involving ancient DNA from multiple African populations will help to further characterize these observations. Discussion. We have presented an in-depth analysis of the genetic history of sub-Saharan Africa in order to characterize its impact on present-day diversity. We show that gene flow has taken place over a variety of different timescales, which suggests that rather than being static, I hope y'all listening, rather than being static, meaning people just stuck in one area, not moving, not migrating, not mixing, not doing shit. That's what that word static means. Rather than being static, populations have been sharing DNA, particularly over the last 3,000 years. An important question in African history is how contemporary populations relate to those present in Africa before the transition to pastoralism that began in the Nile Valley some 9,000 years ago. The F3 statistic and Mulder analysis show evidence for deep Eurasian and some hunter-gatherer ancestry across Africa, to which our globetrotter analysis provides further clarity on the composition of the admixture sources, as well as the timing of events and their impact on groups and our analysis. On the basis of our analysis, none of the African populations in our study has remained isolated and unchanged over the last 4,000 years. Let me read that again. None, Garfield, I know you watching, and I know Jungle Juice is probably going to get the message relayed to him. None of the African populations in our study has remained isolated and unchanged over the last 4,000 years. You niggas are fucking done, man. You retarded son of a bitches.
You're a donut. You're so stupid. You're so stupid. You're stupid. Dumb.
There goes your theory about people staying the same for fucking thousands of years on time. You know?
No. Wait.
Oh, how you gonna be these people? You don't share the nigga. People change, population change, people move, migrate, have sex, do everything. They're not static.
What did you say, nigga?
Let me read it again. On this basis of our analysis, none of the African populations in our study has remained isolated and unchanged over the last 4,000 years. The couple of...
What the fuck?
With a couple of exceptions, the major signals of admixture in our analysis relate to the movement of Eurasian ancestry back into Africa and the movement of genes south and east from Central West Africa, likely as a result of the Bantu expansion. The transitions from foraging to pastoralism and agriculture in Africa is likely to have been complex, with its impact on existing populations varying substantially. Our analysis provides an estimate of the timing of this expansion. It is important to note that dates of admixture inferred through genetics will always be more recent than the date at which two populations have come together. Our data set is not an exhaustive sample of African populations, and there are likely to be other events than those reported here that have been important in generating the current genetic landscape of Africa. What the fuck? Our analysis shows that patterns of haplotype sharing across the sub-Sahara can be characterized by historical gene flow events involving groups with ancestry from across and outside the continent. Let me read that again. Our analysis shows that patterns of haplotype sharing, how do you get haplotype sharing? Through sex, through admixing. And how do you, in order to do that, you got to be close to these people. They either have to come to you or you come to them. Last time unless they was having internet and phone sex and they were able to reproduce that damn way 3,000 fucking years ago. Okay.
Oh, nice.
You niggas ODing on stupidity, man. Our analysis show that patterns of haplotype sharing across the sub-Sahara can be characterized by historical gene flow events involving groups with ancestry from across and outside the continent. We have identified gene flow across Africa, implying that haplotypes have been moving over potentially large distances in relatively short amount of time. As a rough estimate, given that events in the southern African groups involving Bantu sources have occurred within the last 2,000 years, and the distance between Cameroon and Southeast Africa is around 4,000 kilometers. Haplotypes have moved across and into different environments at a rate of roughly 2 kilometers a year. Interpreting haplotype similarity as historical admixture. Analysis that model the correlations in allele frequency, such as those performed here in the allele frequency differences, show widespread evidence for admixture section, provided initial evidence that the presence of Eurasian DNA across sub-Saharan Africa is the result of gene flow back into the continent within the last 10,000 years. And as some groups have ancient over 5,000 years ago shared ancestry with hunter-gatherer groups, whilst the weighted admixture LD decay curves between pairs of populations used by Mulder suggests that this admixture involved particular groups. The interpretation of such events is difficult. Firstly, because our data set included closely related groups, it is not always possible to identify a single best matching reference, implying that sub-Saharan African groups share some ancestry with many different extant groups. On the basis of these analyses alone, it is not possible to characterize the composition of admixture sources. Secondly, when ancient events are identified with Mulder, much as in the Mossi from Burkina Faso, where we estimate admixture around 5,000 years ago between a Eurasian and Khoisan-speaking group. Read that again. When ancient events are identified with Mulder, such as the Mossi from Burkina Faso, where we estimate admixture around 5,000 years ago between a Eurasian and a Khoisan-speaking group. So this is Eurasian. They are the result of Eurasians and African hunter-gatherers mixing. That's what they're a result of. And they see that in their genes and their haplotypes. We know that modern haplotypes are likely only to be an approximation of ancestral diversity. Even the Johansi, a sun group from Southern Africa, traditionally thought to have undergone limited recent admixture, has experienced gene flow from non-Khoisan groups within this time frame. These are the complications related to admixture sources of contemporary populations. For example, our analysis indicate that the Mossi share deep ancestry with Eurasian and Khoisan groups, but any description of the historical event leading to this observation is potentially biased by the discontinuity between extant populations and those present in Africa in the past. It is for this reason that for older events, we define and refer to broader ancestry regions. And why is it biased? Because people believe that sub-Saharan Africans are separated from the rest of the planet. But you can't say that if they got old Eurasian admixture. You can't say that. It says here, and again, it's based off extant populations, how they view the world today. Oh, so the big Sahara today, it separated people today. So it always been no, it hasn't always been that. There's something called the Green Sahara. It said it is for that reason that for older events we define and refer to a broader ancestry region. So in this case, we describe Eurasian ancestry in general, moving back into Africa rather than British DNA in particular. Globetrotter provides an alternative approach by characterizing admixture as occurring between sources that themselves are mixtures of ancestry from contemporary groups. In the situation where no sample group provides a good representation of the admixture source, this additional complexity is likely to be a closer approximation to the truth, with the downside that it is not always possible to assign a specific population label to mix admixture sources. Using contemporary populations as proxies for ancient groups is not the perfect approach and will be improved by DNA from significant numbers of ancient human individuals at sufficient quality with which to calibrate temporal changes to population genetics. Spread of genes within Africa. When new haplotypes are introduced into a population by gene flow, their fate will partly be determined by the selective advantage they confer, as well as the chance effects of genetic drift. Selection can occur in response to a number of different factors. The Greenlandic Inuit, for example, have adapted genetically to a diet rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids. And one of the strongest signals of selection in the genome is found around the LCT gene, mutations in which allow individuals to continue to digest milk into adulthood. Responding to changes in their environment, populations living at high altitudes have adapted convergently, and different genes involved in hypoxic response. In Ethiopians, in Tibetans, in Andean groups, and at separate loci in Andean groups. There are also several examples of humans adapting in response to infectious disease. For example, at the large gene in West Africans, in response to pressure from Lassa fever, and at CR1 in response to malaria. Diseases such as malaria are caused by highly polymorphic parasites, and movement into new environments might lead to exposure to new strands. And implications of widespread gene flow is that it can provide a route for potentially beneficial novel mutations to enter populations, allowing them to adapt to such change. A recent example of this process is the observation of higher than expected frequencies of the Duffy-Noah mutation in population of Madagascar as a result of admixture with African Bantu-speaking groups. The spread of Duffy-Noah allele, an ancient mutation which is thought to have arose at least 30,000 years ago, and confers resistance to the Plasmodium vivax malaria. Throughout Africa, is only possible through contact and gene flow between populations right across the sub-Sahara. So, with that being said, when you go to a new group, especially in the ancient world, you want to mix with the locals so you can get these beneficial mutations to survive and adapt to their localized diseases, right? It says conversely, the mutation responsible for the sickle cell phenotype, which offers protection against malaria, appears to have recently occurred 5 times independently in Africa, causing multiple distinct haplotypes to be observed. These mutations are young, within the order of 250 to 1750 years old. So we'll have had limited opportunity to have been moved around by the gene flow events that we described. Further work is needed to understand the role of admixture in facilitating adaptation. Epidemiology, that's how I said it, epidemiology. Admixture in genetic epidemiology. Epidemiology is the process of identifying the mechanisms that lead to changes in disease prevalence that could result from different environments, behaviors, or genetic backgrounds. Our study helps address these questions by providing a detailed guide to genetic similarity between different ethno-linguistic groups in different geographic locations. This is equally relevant for the studies of important infectious disease, such as malaria, as it is for studies of non-communicable diseases, which are associated with lifestyle changes in developing parts of Africa. As an example, we detect consistent genetic differences between groups in Central West Africa. For example, the Akans and the Namkan and the Kasem from Ghana, but not in groups from West and East Africa, Niger Congo ancestry regions, the Gambia and Kenya. Within these groups, We see individuals with a spectrum of different ancestral backgrounds. These observations are specific to groups in our analysis and cannot be extended to other groups from similar populations. The 7 ethnic groups from the Gambia were all collected in and around Bantu in the Western District, whereas the 3 ethnic groups from Ghana were collected from 2 hospitals in the north and center of the country. Nonetheless, the potential for genetic differences to underlie differences in disease should be guided by analysis of haplotype sharing between groups. Chromosome painting approaches also provide a quantitative measure of the extent to which self-reported ethnic labels capture genetic relationships, which is also important for controlling for the potential confounding effects of population structure. When genome-wide data are unavailable, we see that this can vary extensively from one population to the next. Some individuals who report as coming from the same ethnic group cluster into different groups, and other individuals from different ethnicities cluster together. And so, again, it just recapitulates. Just because you in the same ethnic group don't mean you're the same. It's because we all call African Americans, or you want to call people sub-Saharan Africans. They don't mean they're all the same. They have different ancestries. They have different matrilines, have different patrilines, as we see here. And to say different ethnicities cluster together. You know, people outside your ethnicity might be more related to you than people within it. It says, we also show that there are differences in the inferred relationship between populations using analysis genotype-based approaches such as PCA and F statistics in our haplotype-based analysis in TVD. These results suggest that for some groups, haplotype similarity to other ancestries can vary more substantially than allele frequencies alone. In designing genotyping and sequencing studies, these differences can be important in ensuring that the breadth of variation in African populations is adequately covered. Africa has an exciting and important role in furthering understanding of human biology and disease, and understanding of its patterns of genetic diversity and the historical movements of its people should help in this endeavor. Finish. Done. Finito. Go ahead, Avery. Take it away.
Yeah, that was a hibachi meal. I hope people got full off that, because basically this paper illustrates that West Central African populations do indeed have Eurasian DNA from Mediterranean populations that happen to be genetically closest to Middle Eastern populations. And this Eurasian DNA was introduced into West Central populations from the Common Era all the way back to the BC era. So yeah, for anybody to say that West Central African populations never had Eurasian DNA, that would be a lie. To say that West Central African populations never admixed with Eurasians, that would be a lie. It would seem that this paper fully shows that admixture did occur into and within sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, man.
Very simple stuff. Not hard to understand.
You know, I'm not like these dudes. I gotta get up in the morning, earn my damn bread. These dudes stay-at-home moms and shit. So we're gonna end it, man. I think it's very, very, very simple, and we read it from top to bottom, man. So unsubscribe from my channel. Go subscribe to Garfield so you can get your daily dose of bullshit. We out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fizzle.
He ran up on a chop, he's a boxer. Pow, right in the kisser. That's a stick, that's a drum, I'll drop some, nigga. Pow, right in the kisser. I'ma shoot the K until the cops come. Pow, right in the kisser. We did him like that cause he's a spot burner. Pow, right in the kisser. Pull up with the stick with the drum, who won't run with me? Pow, right in the kisser. Stupid shells dumping out the chop, it's 100. Pow, right in the kisser. I'ma pull it out the Louis bag, don't come for me. Pow, right in the kisser. I just stumped a nigga in some Christian Louboutins. Pow, right in the kisser. I just shot a nigga granny house, don't care who in there. Pow, right in the kisser. I can't trust the niggas that I hang with, they be shooting kids. Pow, right in the kisser.
I smoke a nigga like a Swiss or a pack of cigs.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I pull up with a chop on the ops and split a wig. For real.
Pow, right in the kisser.
I broke his bitch, he popping, now I'm popping on fed.
Pow, right in the kisser.
We didn't drop by, we walked him down, put him in a ditch.
Pow right in the kisser.
I got this FN across a nigga, treat him like a Christian.
Pow right in the kisser.
And my Christian Louboutins running, chasing me a victim.
Pow right in the kisser.
This 762's flipping, I put him in a blender.
Pow right in the kisser.
A bartender, I give him shots, now he look drunk like he on liquor.
Pow right in the kisser.
Those are not Glocks, buddy, those are ghost guns.
Those ain't real.
Pow right in the kisser.
My homie smoked too many ops, he don't got no lungs.
He ain't even got no love.
Pow right in the kisser.
223 shells, nigga, that's for King Kong.
That's what the dick ass.
Pow right in the kisser.
Go play that Roof Chris, bitch, that's my theme song.
We eat that Roof Chris every time we wax.
Pow right in the kisser.
In this belly backpack is a big strap.
Some shit that really can't even fit in his back.
Pow right in the kisser.
He got flip hollows, turned him to a Big Mac.
Turn his dumb ass to a burger or something.
Pow right in the kisser.
Dead man, that's a homie you can't get back.
He's no longer, he can't come back.
Pow right in the kisser.
Stripping every buster nigga at them kickbacks.
They have no chains on them.
Pow right in the kisser.
Riding around the city with two straps, I feel like John Wick.
Pow right in the kisser.
Caught in front of that store, so I flicked him like a bit.
Like a lighter.
Pow right in the kisser.
Bitches choosing sides cause they know we the shit.
Hey, them niggas, we got sticks.
Pow right in the kisser.
But we don't give them shit, we just run them, then we dip.
We did.
Pow right in the kisser.
Bro dropped 50, so I had to place the order.
The order?
Pow right in the kisser.
Chop his head off and throw his body across the border.
I flipped him like a quarter.
Pow right in the kisser.
You was not a slaughter nigga, you the hood porter.
Those are the stones you get shit.
Pow right in the kisser.
You could date the bitch if you got the feed to afford her.
You can't buy that bitch.
Pow right in the kisser. He's never coming back in that stack. Pow right in the kisser. I'ma shoot it till my hand cramp. Pow right in the kisser. I ain't finna go in bareback, bitch. Pow right in the kisser. You love me, then come let my friends crash. Pow right in the kisser. I caught him like in the C class. Pow right in the kisser. They gon' have to run a beat back. Pow right in the kisser. You go against the team, you need cash. Pow right in the kisser. I caught his mama at the repass. Pow right in the kisser.
Another nigga dead, you gotta deal with it.
I mean, it's been a long ass time ago.
Pow right in the kisser.
You an internet thug, I'm in the real trenches.
You just pop it on the ground, weird ass nigga.
Pow right in the kisser.
He wanna squabble up, I wanna kill niggas.
I'ma hit him with this chop, we ain't gon' box.
Pow right in the kisser.
I'm from the stink team and saw real niggas.
We run this shit, y'all weird.
Pow right in the kisser.
I nutted her face and told her deal with it.
Splashed all on the motherfucker's face.
Pow right in the kisser.
I was cooking in the county on the grill, nigga.
I was whipping up all type of fancy shit.
Pow right in the kisser.
I was really in K-Town taking field trips.
Ling Ling, May Ling, Kim Wong and all.
Pow right in the kisser.
All dome shot, we tryna split wigs.
You tryna rearrange some shit.
Pow right in the kisser.
Man, niggas know what the fuck going on, nigga.
Pow right in the kisser.
Man, he's never coming back in that stat, nigga. Man, let that shit go, bro. Like,
Pow
this shit
right
is
in the
ridiculous.
kisser.
Like, you niggas still holding on to grudges and all that shit from 3 years ago, man. Like,
Pow right in the kisser.
I'm just saying, like, y'all niggas, like, it's come on, bro. Like,
Pow right in the
like,
kisser.
it's over with, bro. Like, you man, like, come on,
Pow
bro.
right in the kisser.
He's never coming back in that stat. Like,
Pow right in the kisser.
like, just face it, bro. Like, y'all just holding on to this shit, like, nigga.
Pow right in the
What y'all
kisser.
gonna do? Wait till somebody else get flipped? Like, what's going on?
Pow right in the kisser.
Yeah, exactly, nigga. Yeah.
Pow right in the kisser. Pow right in the kisser.
Pow right in the kisser. Pow right in the kisser. Pow right in the
Pow
kisser.
right in the kisser.
Come on, bro.
Pow right
He's
in the
no
kisser.
longer.